my God.
Here we are.
Okay.
Okay.
And it seems to think that we're okay.
I think we are live.
I don't think so. Not yet. I see nothing. Yeah. Okay. Yes, we are.
We are live.
Woo! it's like
That was
pulling
an
teeth.
experience.
I know the multiple levels of tech are like really something else. It's really just something else. It's an out of body experience to try to get to this point. Okay, I'm ready when you're ready.
Okay, for some reason, camera 2 decided to not work.
Oh, great!
Hi, number 2. Can you work, please?
That's funny.
Okay.
We'll
Gonna
get
figure
there
it out
eventually.
at
We'll
some
get
point.
there eventually, my friend.
Okay, it's me. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tax Files.
Welcome to the Tax Files.
Oh, 2 is working.
Nice. Say hi to Monica. I think Monica's on Instagram. Hi, Monica.
Hello.
Our most loyal fan is here. Yay.
Okay, so that was quite an experience. to just being on screen.
I know. It's just like one day after another. It's just tech after tech after tech problem. So, all right. Okay, what are we doing? What are we going to do?
We are doing a new case that
Brand
came
new,
out.
brand new.
Brand new.
Yeah.
It came out. When did it come out?
A couple days ago. You told me the 29th.
June 29th.
Okay, so
that's,
like last...
That's fresh.
It's
That's fresh. That's fresh.
very fresh. That's very fresh.
And the appeal was heard April 29. So it was a very fast judgment.
April
April 29. So
Oh,
May,
yeah,
June,
that
2
is
months.
fast. Yeah, that is fast.
This is
okay.
what we want.
Yeah,
This-
and we have this is the Honorable Justice McPhee.
Yeah, it's McPhee.
Yeah, so we last read Justice McPhee in, was it Cineplex?
Cineplex. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to read McPhee again.
Yeah, good. Let's find out what happened.
Okay, so
All right.
just a bit of context, what we are doing today, this is a planning similar to DAC investment.
Okay, so CCPCs and their...
Yeah, like CCPCs that went
Adventures?
abroad, and
Yeah.
in DAC it was about the GAR. But this one is not about the GAR.
No GAR?
No GAR.
Okay.
This one is about a technical provision about Keynesian corporations in the Act.
Okay.
This is not a GAR case,
Okay.
but it's the same planning as DAC.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So let's
So,
find out what's going
let's
on here.
find out.
All right.
Okay, so we are reading in purple today.
Yeah, because
Tax
it's
Court
the
of
tax
Canada
court.
purple.
Yes, Tax Court of Canada purple.
Okay,
Very nice.
so Somerset Limited, appellant and His Majesty the King, the respondent. So the appeal was heard April 29. As I said, very fast judge here.
Yeah.
So Justice McPhee. So these are the counsel. So judgment. So let's read this first part. In accordance with the attached reasons for the appeal with
Yeah, that we there's like
something,
funny in the
with
in
respect to the
okay.
appellant's 2019, 2020, and 2021 taxation years, the taxation years is denied in full.
Okay.
For further clarification, it is found that the appellant remained a Keynesian-controlled private corporation, a CCPC, after the continuation. So even after they're going to be in the BVI, it's going to stay Canadian.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay.
Don't know why yet.
All right.
Furthermore, the minister properly disallowed the general rate reduction under subparagraph 123.4(1)(b)(3). I just want to say congrats for using the proper name.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Justice McPhee. With subparagraph 123.4(1)(b)(3) little eyes. That is indeed a subparagraph. Yes, we love to see it.
I love to see the court taking that time to write the proper name.
Yes, I love it too. Yes.
It's much easier to read.
It's so much easier to read. Yes, exactly.
In respect of the taxation years for the same reason.
Okay.
The excessive eligible dividend designations by the appellant are subject to tax under Part 3.1 of the Act, but for the election by the appellant in 2019 and 2020 to treat the excessive eligible dividends in those years as ordinary dividends. Costs
Okay.
are payable by the appellant to the respondent. Oh.
Payable by the appellant to the respondent. Oh, okay.
Oh, taxpayer has to pay costs.
Yes.
The party shall have until September 15, 2026. Okay. I'm not
Okay,
gonna
so
read
there's
the
probably going to
cost
be an
part.
appeal. Yeah.
Justice McPhee.
All right.
And now we are green because
No.
we are IT green.
ITA green.
Sherman's
yeah.
green.
Nice. Sherman's green.
Okay. Between Somerset and His Majesty the King. Reasons for judgment by Justice McPhee.
Yeah.
Introduction. In October 2018, Somerset Limited, a Keynesian-controlled private corporation, ACCPC, entered into an agreement to sell its two Vancouver properties for just over $34 million.
Okay.
The appellant then undertook a series of transactions. Sorry, I'm just looking if I'm in the right place
Yeah,
for
you're,
it.
you're good. Yeah.
Sorry, people on Instagram, I was just looking if you could read as I read. The appellant then undertook a series of transactions prior to closing to avoid specific tax payable by CCPC pursuant to Section 123.3 of the Income Tax Act, and to obtain a general rate reduction under Section 123.4 of the Act. The central transaction is in this series was the appellant's continuation. Ooh, and then there is a footnote in the middle of the sentence.
Wow. Okay.
So now I have to stop reading the sentence to read the footnote. A continuation is a statutory process by which a corporation operating under the corporate law statute of one jurisdiction becomes subject to the laws of another jurisdiction. A key element of this process is that the corporation is deemed to have been incorporated in the new jurisdiction.
Okay.
This is clear. I like that.
Yeah, that's nice. I would have loved if Justice McPhee had added the statutory reference, the 251 reference. Is it 251?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
5.1 or whatever it
he's
is.
gonna talk about it later.
Okay.
I think this is just
Be
an
patient.
intro.
I gotta be
But
patient.
I would have liked the footnote to be at the end.
Always I prefer the footnote
Yeah.
at the end of the sentence, but we are.
It's fine.
It's a lot. he got the naming convention right, so we're yeah.
Into the British Virgin Islands, the BVI, on December 19, 2018.
Okay.
Like, was it only the BVI that were used for this planning?
I don't know. Maybe somebody really liked it. The appellant then undertook a series of transactions prior to closing to avoid specific tax payable by CCPC pursuant to Section 123.3. Okay, and to get their reduction, the small business deduction, and the idea is that they. I'm not sure I understood this. Prior to avoid the refundable tax, right?
Yeah,
That's what we're trying to
You
avoid.
avoid the refundable tax and you obtain the rate reduction that CCPCs are not entitled to for investment income.
The general rate reduction,
Yes.
not the small business. Right. Okay.
Exactly.
Sorry. I got it. I'm caught up. Yes.
The appellant believed that because of the continuation, Somerset would lose its status as a Canadian corporation.
Right.
And more importantly, would no longer be a CCPC.
Right.
However, the appellant also concedes that even after the transactions, it remained a resident in Canada.
Okay, so this is a residence case.
I think it's a Canadian corporation's case.
Okay.
Because residence is not under appeal. Because the BVI doesn't have a treaty with Canada, so it remains resident in Canada. Because we want to be taxable in Canada.
Okay.
So I don't think it's a
I don't
residence
understand
case.
this planning yet. Okay.
Okay. It's the same as DAC.
But it's yes, but then you would need the GAR, and you're telling me there's no GAR.
No GAR.
So, okay, it's a mystery.
Yeah.
It's a mystery. It's the unknown. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Okay, which one?
Well, the X Files. Yeah, okay, fine. That'll do.
Oh, I think. So this is the same as DAC, but there is no GAR.
Well, how can that be? No GAR. It's
Let's
a
find out.
mystery.
It's a mystery. So the minister is not invoking the GAR.
Okay.
It's not a GAR case.
No GAR. R.
No GAR. Oh, someone sent me a joke about the GAR. It's in French.
Oh yeah.
C'est est-ce que vous faites de l'évitement fiscal? Gare à vous.
Gare à vous. Gare à vous. Oh my word. Okay. That's brilliant. And there's a meme attached to this, so I will post it later this
Credits
week.
go to Renault.
Yeah. I'm gonna send it. Yeah, I'm gonna send it. Yeah, all credit to Renaud for thinking of it, and he did make a meme for
Yeah.
me, which I will post. I've got a bunch of memes that students sent me. I got to make a,
Yes.
yeah. Okay,
Okay, let's
So-
go. Let's go back. Okay.
we got a
Page 2.
continuation. Yeah.
We have to read. A very similar transaction was recently considered by the Federal Court of
Okay.
Appeal, the FCA, in Canada versus DAC Investments.
There it is.
I guess the footnote is... Oh, yeah. And this is so recent that McPhee knows there is a leave to appeal that was sought.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like decision in... Like, this is like
Real time.
real time, yeah.
Yeah.
In DAC...
Breaking news.
Breaking news. The parties have sought an appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada in DAC Investments.
Exactly. Okay, good. Okay. Just in. Okay.
Okay. The parties have agreed that much of the general anti-avoidance rule GAR analysis undertaken by the FC in DAC is applicable to this analysis. What is
Okay.
different in this matter is that the respondent has a preliminary argument that GAR need not be considered because a series of transactions change nothing for the appellant from a tax perspective.
Okay.
Okay, this is good, okay? Because you cannot use a GAR if you have a specific anti-avoidance rule in the Act.
That's right.
So if the minister invokes the GAR and I say, no, you should have assessed me under this provision, then I win.
Sure. Well,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yes,
I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
This because, despite the continuation of Somerset and BVI, the company continued to meet the definition of a Canadian corporation under
Subsection.
89.1 of the Act, and therefore was a CCPC as defined pursuant to subsection 125.7 of the Act.
Okay.
Huh.
Continue to meet the definition of a Canadian corporation. I wonder how that's possible. Let's find out.
Okay. Therefore, this appeal first focuses on the statutory interpretation of the definition of a Canadian corporation. If it is necessary to consider GAR, the appellant argues that this matter is distinguishable from DAC because of the availability of an alternative transaction. Footnote. The appellant proposes that had Somerset originally incorporated in BVI in 1943, an impossibility, or in some, or in some other country other than Canada, the same result would have been obtained. So the appellant proposes that if you had done something impossible,
But like incorporating in a country where it wasn't possible to, I'm not sure why it's impossible. Why is it impossible?
I don't know.
Okay.
Let's
So,
find out.
okay, there's a lot of footnotes here. So if it's necessary, because the appellant argues that the matter is distinguishable because of the availability of an alternative transaction. Okay. And what they're saying is, the appellant is saying that had Somerset originally incorporated in BVI in 1943 an impossibility, then something. Yeah. Then something. What's going on? Sorry, we're just doing a little technical reshuffling here. They're saying an impossibility, or in some other country other than Canada, then the same result would have been obtained.
Yeah, that's basically
Okay,
my
I don't-
argument of the other in DAC. I was saying if you had incorporated in BVI from the outset,
From the outset, you never would have been a Canadian corporation.
Yeah.
Fine.
but
why?
you
how
would
does
have
that
never
help?
been a CCPC. Like you would have never had the reduced rate, anyways.
Right. So, but how is this the appellant's argument? How does it help them? I don't understand.
Well, it helps them because if you're not a CCPC, then there is no GAR applicable because you cannot go back to the CCPC regime if you could not have been in the regime.
Okay.
But it's kind of
But
a weird argument
We didn't
because
do the thing.
you
We
would-
didn't do that.
you would
So
not
what-
have had the reduced rate if you had incorporated in the BVI. Yeah, you would always have been taxed as a resident, not CCPC.
Assuming you're a resident in Canada,
Yeah.
but we don't even know what they're resident. I don't understand. Okay. But they're saying if we had done something else, then something else would have happened. And whenever I hear that argument, if I had just done X, something different, then something different would have happened. My answer to that is, duh.
Of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Right.
Can you believe that?
Breaking
if you had
news.
incorporated the BVI in the possibility, you would not have been a CCPC at all. Can you believe that?
Can you believe it?
Really?
Shocking.
Wow.
Okay. All right. So the issues.
Inconceivable!
It's startling.
Okay, let's go back.
Okay.
It is necessary to consider the GAR. If it is necessary to consider the GAR, okay, that's a different. The issues to be decided are:
Okay.
1. Whether the appellant remained a CCPC after the continuation, such that Section 123.3 tax applies to any of the 2019, 2020, and 2021 investment income of taxable capital gains. Whether the minister properly disallowed the internal rate reduction under subparagraph 123.4 1b 3 lies in respect of the taxation years for the same reason, and alternatively, whether the GAR applies such that the tax pursuant to Section 123.3 of the Act should be applied, and the general rate reduction under Section 123.4 should be denied in respect of the taxation years.
Okay.
An agreed statement of facts was filed on this matter, which sets out the following. Agreed
Okay.
statement. Always fun. Analysis. Corporate details. The appellant Somerset is a corporation. Somerset was incorporated in British Columbia, BC, under the Companies Act, BC. Somerset was incorporated on May 26, 1943. Somerset's business purpose was to... We are a bit off center. I will just put back to me.
There you go. That's better.
Thank you. Somerset has been... Somerset's business purpose was to make and hold long-term investments, including rental property and shares of various companies listed on TSX. Somerset has been resident in Canada from the time it was incorporated to now, including throughout the taxation years from December 16, 2018 to December 15, 2019, December 16, 2019 to December 15, 2020, and
Tax
December
years. Okay.
tax year on December 15?
Okay. It's allowed. Yep.
Why do you want a taxation year that ends in the middle of the month?
Well, their job is to hold long-term investments. I don't know. No idea.
Okay, as of December 10, 2018, each of those following persons had been a Canadian resident since at least 1987 and held 25%, 11,345 shares of Somerset's voting shares, common shares.
Common voting shares, yeah.
Catherine Cairns, John Steckel,
Okay. Sure.
John, Robert Steckel,
Robert.
and Robin Cairns. Robin.
Okay.
John and Robert are brothers of each other. Robin and Catherine are sisters
That
of
is
each other.
funny construction.
And
John
cousins.
and Robert are brothers of each other.
Of each other.
Robin and Catherine are sisters of each other and cousins of John and Robert. Okay.
I feel like there's
So
gonna
we
be a
get to-
clue somewhere. It's like you have a family of 5.
It's like a logic game for the LSAT.
Robert
So
and
Robert
John.
and John are
They are brothers of each other.
and Catherine and
Robin.
Robin are sisters
Of each other.
who are cousins.
So who is Robert for Robin?
That is Robin's cousin.
Robert is, yeah, indeed.
Robin's cousin, yes.
But who is Robin for Robert?
That's also his cousin.
Oh yeah,
They are
yes.
cousins of each other. The logic game. I win the logic game. Okay.
win.
Yes. Good. Okay.
And because we have a break, I'm gonna solve this. Little
Okay,
issue.
good. Oh,
Oh,
nice job.
yeah,
That's
very good.
so much better. Welcome to the messy studio. You get to see everything when you're in the studio mode. Yes, it's great. I don't know
Oh, yeah.
why the camera decides to sometimes just go some other place. It's like, hey, let me zoom in on the soundboard. That's the most exciting thing
I
here.
think the camera's. Oh, it's because
Oh, there we go.
auto-zoom
Okay, there
was
we go.
on, that's
Okay,
it.
there you go. All
You
right,
have to be
so
careful.
so Catherine, one of the sisters. Yes. Okay.
Was at All Material Times a director of Somerset.
Okay.
John was at All Material Times a director and authorized representative of Somerset.
Okay.
Oh, so John has more power.
Director and authorized rep, so he can sign stuff. I assume that is what that means.
But they all have power. They're all directors.
Yeah.
Well, Catherine and John.
No, just Catherine and
So
John.
assumably
Right.
Robin has absolutely no power.
Right, and Robert.
Yeah.
Right.
Somerset's status as a CCPC
Okay.
at all relevant times until at least December 10, 2018. Somerset met the conditions necessary to be a Keynesian-controlled private corporation, CCPC, as defined by subsection 248.1 and 125.7.
Okay.
The agreement to sell the buildings. As of October 16, 2018, Somerset owned 2 apartment buildings. The buildings in Vancouver, BC at 5450 University Boulevard,
All right.
owned since 1973,
Oh.
and 5600 Dalhousie Road, owned since 1952.
Oh, the big building.
That's a cool one.
That's a nice
Can
building.
we show it to the? Can you show it to the?
I
camera?
mean, you'd have to look at you. Yeah, I can try. There, look.
Oh, look at this.
Wow,
That's a beautiful
that's a
building.
nice building.
Can we see a 5600 Dalhousie Road?
Okay, hang on. 5600 Dalhousie Road. Let's see here. Dalhousie Road in Vancouver. Oh, it's University Endowment Lands, BC. Okay. Oh, there it is. Also,
Oh.
like, these are big buildings.
It's a cool building.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Okay, so big buildings and expensive buildings. Too.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah. Wow.
On October
okay.
16, 2018, Somerset entered an agreement to sell the buildings to Starlight Acquisitions Limited, Starlight, an
Okay.
arm's length corporation for a price of $34,250,000.
Wow, okay.
After adjusting for credits to Starlight, the total purchase price for the buildings was $34,000 and $20,000, comprised of
34 million,
5,600
yeah.
Dalhousie, land. Oh, I'm not reading
Land building,
those numbers.
land building, yeah, and altogether 34 million.
But there's
34 million.
equipment. What
And
is the
equipment. Okay.
Equipment.
I don't know what that's all about, but it added 30,000. It's not that much.
In 2018, Somerset also had a stock portfolio.
Yeah, because above, didn't we see that Somerset was held for long-term investments?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
buildings and stocks.
I guess so, okay.
Of course.
Stock's not usually, okay, but anyway,
Maybe bitcoins.
I doubt it. Let's hope not. Okay.
The Somerset's continuation to the BVI. On October 30, 2018, by special resolution, Somerset shareholders resolved to authorize Somerset to make an application to the proper authority in the BVI for an instrument of continuation, continuing Somerset into the BVI.
Okay.
On October 30, 2018, Somerset's directors resolved to authorize Somerset to make application to the proper authority in the BVI for an instrument of continuation, continuing Somerset into the BVI.
Okay.
On October 30, 2018, Somerset's directors applied to the BC Registry of Services for authorization to continue Somerset outside of BC. On October 31st, 2018, Somerset received approval from the
Oh.
BC Register of Companies to continue out of BC to the BVI.
Okay. So, like,
These
instant
guys
approval.
are fast.
They're fast. And then the very next day.
On the very next day, on November 1st, 2018, Somerset made an application to the Intertrust Group of the BVI to continue into the BVI.
Okay.
On December 10, 2018, Somerset was continued out of BC and into the BVI, the continuation.
Okay.
There was a long gap.
It was a little, it took a month and 9 days.
That's
okay.
a long gap.
Yeah.
It's like they wanted it to be at the very end of the taxation year.
Just before December, but then why not? Well, okay. Yeah.
The purpose of
Okay.
Somerset's continuation.
Why are we continuing?
Somerset's primary purpose in undertaking was the continuation was to avoid the Section 123.3 tax, for which it was later reassessed, as set out below.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't well versed in Canadian tax sections, 123.3 is the refundable tax on portfolio investments held in Canadian controlled private corporations. And why is there a refundable tax? Because Canadian controlled private corporations enjoy a lower tax rate.
If it's active.
If they have active income, and this is not, and they get a higher tax rate if it's parked, incorporated pocketbook type assets.
I just got the alternative argument. It's not a business. It's not business income.
Right.
So they never had the low rate. They were always taxed at the higher rate.
Because they never had active income.
Well, presumably.
Well,
If it's just like stock portfolio,
yeah, but if you're managing the portfolio, doesn't
well, you need 5+ employees. Maybe they had like 5+ employees.
in Canada? No, do you?
It will be well, if it's like rental income, yes.
I just feel like rental income is always business income. I just don't believe this this
Well,
idea that you could have rental income and not have any labor involved.
you need employees
Yeah.
because
You've got a manager, you've got a
it's-
building manager, you've got somebody
Yeah.
dealing with the tenants and all this.
it's the most active passive
Yeah.
income.
I just don't
But
believe
it's
it.
never passive, really.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So so the claim here, the purpose. This is the court, I guess, saying that the primary purpose was to avoid the refundable tax.
No, it's the parties. This is the agreed
This is the agreed statement of facts. So the parties agree that
Yeah.
Somerset's primary purpose was tax avoidance. Okay, fine.
This is
It's not illegal. You're allowed to pursue tax avoidance.
You are. But gare à vous.
But gare à vous. C'est ça,
As
exactly.
long as you're not abusing the act, you're fine.
Yeah, sure.
Of course.
Let's find out.
Closing the sale of the buildings. In respect of the sale of the buildings, Somerset and Starlight agreed initially to a closing date of December 10, 2018. On
Okay.
November 15, 2018, Somerset and Starlight agreed to change the closing date to December 17, 2018.
So they would have a 2-day tax year. Okay.
On December 17, 2018, Somerset and Starlight completed the sale of the buildings.
Oh no, this is a building. Sorry, not a change
that's
of
not
tax
a
year. Yep. Yep. Okay.
With the capital gain.
Okay.
As a result of the sale of the buildings, Somerset realized a capital gain of $32,239,42 and a taxable capital gain of half that amount, calculated as follows.
Okay. And so then we get some math. Okay.
You
Fine.
you sell your buildings for like 33 million,
Yeah.
and your ACB is 1.75
Wow.
million.
And you have some outlays and expenses
Wow.
there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge
Hey, look at
thing.
those outlays and expenses. Are you sure that's not negative capital gain? No, but negative proceeds?
Proceeds?
Disposition? Okay. So 32-ish capital gain, and that means 16-ish taxable capital gain. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. BC registration. On January 10, 2019, Somerset registered as an extra-provincial company in BC with the BC Registry Services.
Okay, so just to remind us, they closed it December something, they continued into BVI December something, and then by January they're registering again in BC
Yeah.
as a non-BC, extra-provincial, non-BC company. Okay.
Okay, the incorporation of the holding companies. On December 4, 1989, Rubberman Holdings Limited. Rubberman,
Rubberman Holdings.
which is the brother of Stickyman.
Shout out to Jean Sebastian for bringing Sticky Man into our vocabulary in corporate tax last week when he drew a structure chart and put Stick Men on there and called them Sticky Men. Sticky Man 1 and Sticky Man 2. Yeah. It was great.
It was great.
I loved it.
And thank you for Somerset to bringing Rubberman.
Yes, to our attention.
Do you think Rubberman is like Bonhomme Michelin?
That's a good question. They're gonna. Yeah. Well, let's find out.
Can we call Bonhomme Michelin Rubberman now? Was incorporated in BC. Robin is the sole director of Rubberman.
Okay.
Robin holds 100 Class A non-voting common shares and 100 Class B non-participating voting-only preferred shares of Rubberman.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so that's unusual. We got common shares that can't vote and voting only preferred shares.
Yeah,
Non-participating, but you vote. You
Okay.
don't get anything, but you vote.
cool.
Okay.
Okay. This sounds like
That's
a
a
case
strange.
study.
Yeah, it does.
It's like, let's invent
that's
something
a funny,
weird.
Yeah.
Let's put non-voting common shares
that's
and voting
strange.
preferred shares.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the common shares like both of these together because
Yeah.
usually common shares have 3 rights.
Right.
And these are common shares non-voting, which are kind of preferred shares.
Strange.
Could
Okay.
you have common shares non-voting?
I don't.
Is it even
why
a
do you
common
even
share
call-
at
I
this
don't think
point?
it's not a common share.
I mean, can I have like a redeemable share where I call it a common share and it makes it a common share?
No, it's not a common share. It's uncommon. It's uncommon to have a common share that doesn't have voting rights. That's the whole point of a common share is it's the one that has the 3 rights, one of which is voting. This is silly. Anyway, just because you call it a common share doesn't make it a common share. It sort of looks like we've got
Yeah.
2 classes of non-voting
Yeah.
of preferred shares.
Exactly.
Sorry.
If I call my share a zebra share, does it make it a zebra?
Yes,
Yeah. Right.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, on December 15, 2018, Windfall Ventures Inc. Windfall was incorporated in BC. Catherine is the sole director and holds 100% of the common voting shares of Windfall. On December 15, 2018, J. Steckle Holdings Limited,
Okay.
JS Holdings,
JS Holdings. Yeah.
was incorporated in BC.
Okay.
John is the sole director and holds 100% of the common voting shares of JS Holdings.
Okay. That's more
December
normal. That's more
15,
common.
Yeah. 2018, RJ Steckle Investment Limited, RGI, and together with Waberman, JS Holdings, and Windfall, the holding companies, and individually, each a holding company, was incorporated in BC.
Okay, we're gonna have to go back up again. So we've got Rubberman, and now we have JS Holdings.
Okay, so each the four people at the beginning,
Yeah.
two being brothers of each other and two being sisters of each other, and all
Yeah.
four being cousins,
Yeah.
but not of each other, but
Right.
of each group. They all have holding companies,
Okay.
which is fairly common.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Of course, the common non-voting are not that common.
They're not that common.
They're-
All right.
Can I call my shares uncommon shares?
You can call them uncommon. We
Is there
should
a
we should
limit?
make a parody band called Uncommon, and then we take all of Common's music and turn it into tax songs and call it Uncommon. Anyway, that's just another idea for
Can
the
I put-
universe.
Can I put all my
process.
common shares in the house and call it the House of Common?
But bump. Terrible. Oh my gosh. I'm just trying to get a structure chart here. Okay. So we got okay.
Okay, so
Yep. So we got Rubberman,
Robin,
JS Holdings.
but wait a minute.
Yeah.
Robin, okay, Robin has all the shares, presumably, of
I don't think so.
Rubberman?
No, I don't think so.
I don't know.
No, she's just the director. Robin
But she
holds.
holds shares.
Oh, right.
But
So
is
she's
it
got.
all the shares? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no.
Okay. Two kinds of preferred shares, and then
Windfall
and who
is
owns
Catherine,
Catherine, and she owns 100%
common voting.
common shares, and then Jay Steckel, and that's
John.
John, and he's got 100% common shares. Okay, and then RG Steckel,
RGI, Steckle,
okay, and together with the other company, the holding companies.
and there's RGI somewhere, and RGI is Robert.
That's the one. See, RG Steckel Investments, RGI, in paragraph 33. Okay, so we got, okay, go ahead. So we got four companies, four holding companies being created in 2018. They're all 2018, right?
No. Roberman was 1989.
Okay, 1989. And the rest are 2018, December 15, 2018.
So Roberman was a pre-existing, and the rest were new,
Okay.
brand new companies.
Okay.
Fresh.
All right, fresh.
Okay, resolution
Exciting.
to pay capital dividends.
Okay.
On December 17, 2018, Somerset's directors resolved to have Somerset pay a capital dividend of $14,400,000 on its
Okay.
common shares pursuant to an election made under subsection 83.2.
Okay.
On December 17, 2018, Somerset elected to pay a capital dividend of $14.4 million on its common shares pursuant to section 83.2. On December 18, 2018, Somerset paid a capital dividend of $14.4
Okay,
million.
for some reason we need to have this in this agreed statement of facts. We have to set out each of the steps involved, even though you could have just said they resolved, elected, and paid.
That's what the parties agreed on.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
all of which at that time were held by Catherine, John, Robert, and Robin.
Okay.
On January 30th, 2019, Somerset's directors resolved to have Somerset pay a capital dividend of $1.6 million on its common shares pursuant to an election made under subsection 83.2. On January 30th, 2019, Somerset elected to pay a capital dividend of $1.6 million on its common shares pursuant to subsection 83.2. On January 30th,
Okay.
2019, Somerset paid the dividend. Okay. Reorganization of Somerset. On January 31st, 2019, Somerset's directors resolved to approve Catherine, John, Robert, and Robin transferring their respective 11,345 common shares to Windfall, JS Holding, RGI, and Rubberman, respectively. The common shares transferred by Catherine, John, Robert, and Robin through their holding companies represented all of their shares of Somerset. As of January 31st, 2019, the value of the 11,000 common shares held by each of Catherine, John, Robert, and Robin was $4 million with an ACB of
$111?
and 91 cents?
Okay.
What is this amount?
The value was $4 million. Well, maybe they already took out all of their, maybe they just returned all their capital and this is what's left.
Oh, yeah,
That
probably.
could be.
Probably. Because you
Okay.
don't want it to go back to zero, I think. You need a nominal amount. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just
Okay.
thinking out loud.
So, yeah, you're okay. You're good. Yep.
Pursuant to Section 85, Catherine, Robert, Robin, and Windfall, JS Holdings, RGI, and Rubberman, respectively, elected to transfer the common shares for proceeds of disposition equal to ACB in exchange for shares of the holding company, 100 Class A common shares of Windfall, JS Holdings, RGI, and 1,000 Class C preferred shares of Rubberman, respectively.
Okay. So they just swapped their shares for their holdco shares.
But that's
fine.
interesting, though, because Rubberman now has Class C shares, which we have not seen before.
Oh, interesting.
Like, Rubberman is the weird one,
Yeah. Yeah.
presumably because he's made of rubber.
I'm rubber. Yes. I'm rubber. You're glue, etc., etc. Yes.
On February 25, 2019, Somerset paid dividends on its common shares to the holding companies and designated those dividends as ordinary and eligible as follows.
Okay, so ordinary. So now we've got ordinary. So we paid out all the capital dividends first, and now we're paying out ordinary dividends. Okay.
Yes. If Somerset were a CCPC at this time, the balance of its general rate income pool, GRIP, for purposes of the Act at the end of the 2019 taxation year was $670,967.
Okay.
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 If Somerset were a CCPC at this time, the dividend of $6.3 million designated as eligible dividends and paid by Somerset on February 25, 2018 exceeded its GRIP by $5.6 million. Huh.
Okay. Is that a bad thing?
Well, it's because the credit that you're going to give to the shareholders is different because it's an eligible dividend and not an ordinary dividend. So, because CCPCs pay a different rate than because of the integration, when you pay it back to the individual, the credit is different depending on ordinary versus eligible.
Okay.
And so it's like an excess eligible dividend.
Okay.
So but I'm not sure at this stage if there is any tax consequence. Because it's an intercorporate dividend now.
Right.
Which is fine.
So it's going to be deductible anyway.
Yeah.
Now it is. I mean, before it wasn't, right?
Yeah. Let's see what they did.
Okay.
It's a company in the BVI, but it's a resident, so no FAPI.
Is it a resident? I mean, have we established that it's a resident in Canada or not?
I think it's a fact. I think we established that they were. Well, I'm not sure, but in DAC, they were resident. Well, DAC was resident
In Canada?
in Canada.
Until they continued into
No,
BVI.
even after they continued.
No, but only because of the GAR.
No, because of the beers
The management and control?
was in Canada.
Then why do you need the GAR? Why are you confusing me, Raphael? Why do you do this to me?
I'm not.
What are you saying? You're saying
I'm saying
Dax was still resident in Canada and was
Yes.
a CCPC
it was
without
not a
the GAR.
CCPC because you cannot be a CCPC if you are not a Canadian corporation, even if you are a resident.
Right, that's right. Right. Okay.
Okay.
I caught back up again.
I hope I'm not confusing.
No, you're not allowed to confuse me. Well, it's easy to confuse me on this stuff.
Well, it's easy to confuse anyone in this stuff,
very easy to be
including
confused.
the CRA.
There you go. Womp womp. Oh, womp womp.
I love this one.
Womp womp. Okay, so we're gonna do some more dividends.
Okay, dividends. Dividends 2020 dividends. We love dividends. On November 16, 2020, Somerset paid dividends of $500,000 on its common shares to each holding company for total dividends of $2 million. Somerset designated the dividends of $2 million paid on November 16, 2020 as eligible dividends. If Somerset were a CCPC at that time, the balance of its GRIP at the end of the 2020 taxation year was $76,000.
Okay.
If Somerset were a CCPC at that time, the dividends of $2 million designated as eligible dividends and paid by Somerset on November 16, 2020 exceeded its GRIP by $1.9 million.
Okay.
Reporting the taxable capital gains and other investment income. On February 11, 2019, Somerset filed a T2 income tax return for a taxation year running from January 1st to December 9, 2018.
Okay.
On March 4, 2019, Somerset filed a T2 income tax return for a taxation year running from December 10 to December 15, 2018.
A 5-day tax year. Okay.
And that's a good way to lose your losses if you have some.
Yep.
On April 9, 2020, Somerset filed a T2 income tax return, the 2019 return for a taxation year running from December 16 to December 15, 2019. Okay, that's
now we're back on track. Yeah.
Back on track. Somerset subsequently filed T2 income tax returns, the 2020 return and 2021 return for taxation years running from December 16, 2019 to December 15, 2020, the 2020 taxation year, and December 16 to December 15, 2021, the 2021 taxation year, respectively.
Okay.
On June 6, 2022, Somerset requested that the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, grant it a change in year-end to reflect the year-ends as filed so that Somerset would not have to redo its accounting and financial records.
Okay.
Somerset's request was granted, and beginning in 2018, Somerset's year-end for taxation purposes was December 15. What?
Okay.
Prior to December 10, 2018, Somerset's year-end for financial and income tax purposes was December 31st.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Ah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
That's why it's the 15
Yes.
and that's 31st.
Yeah.
In its 2019 return, Somerset A reported a capital gain of $32.2 million from the disposition of the buildings, reported net investment income of $166,550. The 2019 investment income did not report any refundable tax payable under subsection 123.3 and claim a general rate tax reduction of $2.2 million. For its 2019 taxation year, Somerset paid Part 1 federal tax of $2.5 million.
Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, would still like to refuse the $2.2 million and make you pay a refundable tax?
I guess. Seems like.
Yeah. Somerset requested, and the CRA allowed, an adjustment to reduce the 2019 capital gain from 32
million,
as reported, to 32 million.
There's like the
There's
difference
like
between 81 and 30. 40,000. Yeah.
40,000 less.
Okay.
Because, I don't know. Fees.
For reasons.
Refund fees.
Yeah.
In its 2020 return, Somerset A reported a capital gain of $170,000, reported net investment income of $180,000, did not report any refundable tax payable under 132.3, and claim a general rate reduction of $45,000.
Okay. Yeah.
And let's continue. For its 2020 taxation year, Somerset paid Part 1 federal tax of $50,000 and Part 4 of $29,000. In its 2021 return, Somerset A reported no capital gains, reported net investment income of $15,000, did not report any refundable tax, claimed a general rate reduction, and paid Part 1 tax of $2,000.
Wow, that's a big difference.
Well, it's surely you don't have much money left at that point.
Yeah. Once you,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, reporting the holding company's dividends. each of Windfall, RGI, and IS Holdings for its taxation years ending December 31st, 2019 and 2020,
Okay.
and Rubberman for its taxation year ending October 31st, 2019 and 2021, reported taxable dividends from Somerset in the amounts of $1.8 million, for which 1.6 was eligible and $500,000 was eligible,
Okay.
respectively. So they were all eligible.
This is very strange. Reporting taxable dividends,
I thought some was
of
ordinary.
which I'm very confused
I
what
go
they're telling
back
us
here.
here.
There was an ordinary dividend. Where is the ordinary
Where did it
dividend?
go? Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. I'm confused again.
Oh.
I'm confused again. I don't
At least
understand.
that
Yeah.
time it's not because of me.
That's true. But 15, so that 1591 matches the one above? But why are there two? Okay, well, anyway, this is the agreed
it's the
statement
party,
of facts.
so it's true. Everything
Oh,
I'm
boy.
saying right now is true.
Yeah,
You're not allowed to dispute it.
yeah,
It's true. It's,
Of course.
It's the truth.
it's the truth.
Each holding company deducted these dividends under subsection 112.1 and reported neither Part 1 nor Part 4 tax thereon. The reassessments.
Okay,
Do we have a music for that?
for reassessment. That's correct.
The reassessments. On October 7, 2022, the Minister of National Revenue, the Minister, reassessed Somerset's 2019, 2020, and 2021 taxation year and issued notices of reassessments on that date.
Okay,
I am not going to read the parentheses.
yep, the reassessments.
By the 2019 reassessment, the Minister accepted that Somerset's 2019 taxation year ended December 15, accepted that the taxable capital gain should be taxable, assumed
Okay.
inter alia that Somerset was a CCPC, and imposed tax under 120.3.
Okay,
The Minister's acceptance that Somerset's 2019 taxation year ended on December 15, 2019, that the taxable capital gain should be taxable in the 2019 taxation year, or the result of the Minister granting Somerset's request for a change in year end.
fine.
By the 2020 and 2021 reassessments, the Ministry imposed tax under Section 123.3 on Somerset's 2020 taxable capital gain, 2020 investment income, and 2021 investment income.
Okay,
In addition, by the reassessment, the Minister disallowed the general rate reduction in the amount of $2.1 million for the 2019, 2020, 2021 taxation year, allowed a dividend refund increase of $2.2 million and $707 million in the respective years, accepted Somerset's subsection 185.12 election to treat the 2019 and 2020 excessive eligible dividend designation as ordinary dividends, reduced the capital gain on the sale from 32.281 to 32.239 million per Somerset's request.
okay,
Okay, the objection. On November 10, 2022, Somerset filed with the Minister a notice of objection by which it objected to the reassessment.
yeah,
As of the date of the notice of appeal, February 8, 2023, more than 90 days had elapsed since Somerset filed the objection, and the Minister had neither confirmed, vacated, nor varied the reassessments in response to the objection. Facts agreed to pertaining to Gore are set out later in the decision.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have some agreed facts, and
A lot
there
of
seems to
facts.
be, okay. And now here we go.
Okay, position of the parties. To be a CCPC, a corporation must be a Keynesian corporation.
Is that a position of the parties?
It's the introduction to
Okay.
the position of the parties.
Fine.
I'm defending McPhee here.
It's allowed. I'm just saying. That's okay. Fine.
Because, as you will see, this is just the heading, position of the party.
Yes.
But then we will see the respondent's position and the appellant's position.
Yes.
So this is the introduction
Okay,
to
fine.
each position.
Okay. Yeah, I'm
I,
with you.
I really want that A minus.
Maybe we'll get there. Okay.
Yeah. The appellant attempted to change its status as a CCPC
Yeah.
through the series of transactions described below in the agreed statement of fact of paragraph
Described
26.
above in the below. Okay,
No,
all
below.
right.
It's going to be
Okay.
below. Both parties agree that we must look to the words of the act.
Yes. Why not?
Yeah.
Good
we
idea.
must look to the words of the act.
Yes.
Shocking. Stringly.
Startling. To determine things, we have to look at the words of the act. Yes.
Who would have thought, really?
What a thought.
Specifically, subsection 89.1 to determine whether Somerset remained a CCPC because it remained a Canadian corporation despite the avoidance transactions undertaken.
Okay.
Because we're looking to the words of the act, it's going back to green. Sherman's green. Respondent's position. I promised there was going to be a position.
Yes, here it comes. Yes.
The respondent's main argument is that the definition of a Canadian corporation is clear and unambiguous.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. When you read it, you're like... Yeah. On a plain reading of paragraph.
Just paragraph. I have words about this, but it is a paragraph. A B is a paragraph. Here, I have a pillow to prove it. Just to show, like, we can see here that a section is a numeral, then a subsection is a numeral with parens, and then a paragraph is a letter with parens. Look at that paragraph
Small letter.
A. Small letter, exactly. And here we have a B, which looks like a letter, and then a 1, and then the section 89. So 89, 1B is a paragraph.
Oh, well, let's do this one.
It's a paragraph. That's it. Ta-da. It's a paragraph. Okay.
Okay, but I want to learn more. What is after a paragraph?
Okay, fine. Gather round. Gather round, my friends. You start with a part 1.
Ooh, that's why we call part 1 tax.
Part 1 tax. And then there's like part 2 and part 3 and part
4.
4 tax, which people don't like to pay. Then you have divisions, which are capital letters, no punctuation. Then I'm really hugging this pillow. Then we have subdivision, small letter, no parens. Then the aforementioned section, the most common one, the one that everybody calls things when they don't know the name of it. They call it section. Then subsection, paragraph. Then what's next? These little eyes, romanettes, some people call them. That's a subparagraph, friends, a subparagraph, romanettes. And then when we get back to capital letters with parens, it's a clause. And then if we switch back to Roman numerals, capitalized, we get subclauses. And then we get back to a number, again, with nothing around it, just an ordinal. It's a sub-clause. You very rarely see this sub-clause.
Almost never, yeah.
We do see clauses.
We still see sub-clause in
Sometimes.
FAPI.
Yeah, sometimes. But we really try to hold ourselves somewhere between section and clause for the most part, is somewhere in between there. Yeah. The more you know. Okay.
You want to do it in French?
Ben, on peut. OK, en français, on commence avec le partie 1. On continue avec section A, sous-section, ça veut dire lettre minuscule.
Oui.
OK?
Ou petit A.
Petit, hein? And then section in English, article. In French, article. Subsection 1 in French, paragraph. You can see the confusion.
Et là, c'est difficile
Ouais, c'est
quand
difficile.
on regarde dans les deux langues
peu.
parce qu'un paragraphe, c'est pas un paragraphe.
Paragraph, exactly. Note that in English, paragraph is the A, and en français, paragraphe, c'est le numéral. And then l'alinéa, small a. Notice only the closing paren, not the opening paren.
That's important. When you
Yes.
write in French, don't put the opening
two
parentheses.
parens, and you get your lint off your pillow also while you do this. Okay, and then we have where we have subparagraph, we have sous-alinéa, and that's what do you call romanette or one little I?
Un petit, deux petits, trois petits.
Un petit,
Un petit.
deux petits,
Yeah.
trop petit. Yeah. Okay. A très petit, and it's very petit, and you put it in both parens.
Yeah.
And then clause is division.
Yeah.
And subclause is subdivision, mais c'est
It's not sous, it's sub.
sub.
Yeah.
Subdivision,
Subdivision.
pas sous-division for whatever reason, one. And then sous-sub. Sous-sub.
Yeah. Sous sub.
Sous-subdivision.
Sous subdivision.
If you ever get yourself down to sub-sub-clause, it's sous-sub. That's my favorite in French.
Ah, c'est beau celui-là.
Okay. And you can find all kinds of merch with the naming provisions on them if you go to my Redbubble. So there you go, extra plug there. You go to Redbubble and look for my name, Prof. Christians, and you will find the naming conventions on everything you could possibly want. But you can also always get a free naming convention sticker by just coming to my office. I will always have a sticker for you. Okay.
Thank you. And can we also get the Charmin's pillow on your website?
Yes. Don't tell anybody, but yes, you can. Yes, you can get the practitioner's income tax pillow. Yes, you can. It's for people who love tax law. Yes, you can get
This is beautiful. I want one.
Really?
Yeah.
Ben, il faut le faire en français aussi parce
Oh,
que
c'est
il y a
vrai.
souvent en anglais. So maybe this is a project that I need to take care of this time. I'll make it in French. Okay.
Prochain
Anyway.
projet,
Oui.
un coussin en français.
Voilà.
Okay, let's go back to the respondents.
Yes.
Position. Okay, so on a plain reading of
Paragraph.
paragraph,
I know. We
I was like, is this the paragraph or the
no,
paragraph?
exactly. Exactly.
Alinéa, paragraph,
Paragraph.
paragraph,
Yeah.
alinéa,
Yeah.
alinéa, it's a paragraph. It's very, honestly, once you know both French and English, it's really confusing.
It's very hard to keep them
Yeah.
straight. It's true. Yeah.
But the
Okay.
only thing that really annoys me in French is when the alinéa has the opening parentheses.
Yeah. It's a funny decision.
Yeah.
Like why? But
I don't know.
I say why all the time, and I often don't get an answer. This is just one of those times.
I don't know. It's beautiful
Yep.
to be different in French.
Yep. That's it. Yep.
I would be very curious to know the history of the naming.
Of the naming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somerset meets and has always met the definition of a CCPC.
Okay. So this is the respondent is obviously the Crown
The Crown.
saying you are, and you have always been a CCPC. Okay.
That's a Uchronic position,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
You have always been. Always, even like 200 BC, you were a CCPC.
Before you existed.
The definition of a CCPC. Well, I would say at
Yeah.
all material times,
Fine.
meets and has
Yes.
always met at all material times.
Yeah.
The definition of a CCPC.
Yeah.
The plain text reading of
Paragraph.
that we don't have the S for some reason, accords with the context and purpose of that paragraph. Oh, but we know it's a paragraph. Sorry. The
We're
words.
begging you. We're begging you. Please use the proper
It's
naming
hard to
convention.
read. It's for
Yes,
me.
yes.
Please.
Please.
Please, text cord, do it
Please.
for me.
Please.
Do we have any sound I could use for that?
I don't have like it's a begging. I'm begging you. You know
What
what?
is
We need.
Oh.
That's. But actually, that's correct. That's what we should be hitting anytime it's not.
Well, this is me when I'm going to call the tax court to complain about this.
Yeah.
Maybe you can chat the tax court
Yes.
like we can do with the Supreme
That'd
Court.
be nice. Yeah. A little. What was the name of that thing? In French, what's the name of chat? Chatbot?
Clavardage.
Ah, that was surprising to see. Who knew?
It's not AI.
Public service announcement. Did you know? Better put it on me. Put it on us.
Oh.
Put it on. Put it in studio.
Wait.
You could do studio. Okay. Breaking news. You can now chat with the, I guess, register of the Supreme Court. They have a new chatbot on their website. I bet you did not know that, but you can.
I don't think it's a chatbot. It's a real person that
No.
answered. I'm pretty sure it's a real person.
Okay. Breaking
Because
news.
we had to wait
true.
for an agent.
We did have to wait.
It's a real person.
So they have an actual real person at the Supreme Court that you can ask your questions of on the Supreme Court website. Who knew? That's new. As far as I know, that's new.
That's new. I think the tax court has. I'm not sure if it has it, but I'm pretty sure it has. The tax court has one.
Maybe. I don't know. I never tried.
And if you don't like talking to humans, you can also do the CRA chatbot.
In any event, we're in paragraph 89(1)(b) with the respondent saying you are and always were at relevant times as
Okay, so-
CCPC. Okay.
The words Parliament ultimately chose to effect that purpose should be respected, with no additional words should be read and no additional words should be read in to change what Parliament enacted.
Okay.
As such, the appellant was still a CCPC after the continuation.
I suspect that pretty soon they're going to give us the text of subsection 89(1) so that we can read it ourselves. Like it's going to be later in the
The
judgment,
analysis,
right?
probably.
We'll see. Okay.
In support of the above paragraph, the minister makes two arguments concerning the status of the appellant as a CCPC. First, they rely upon the fact that Somerset was incorporated in Canada in 1943 and remains a resident up until the present day.
Okay.
Following the continuation, the respondent acknowledges that Somerset was no longer a King's incorporation under paragraph 89(1)(a) because it was then deemed to have been incorporated in the BVI in 1943. Their position is that Somerset nonetheless remained a CCPC because it remained a King's incorporation in accordance with the definition of subsection 89(1)(b).
Okay. That's
This
not a
bec-
subsection, it's a paragraph. So, but anyway. Yeah.
But A+ for the effort.
Okay.
There is some effort here, and I appreciate it.
Okay. Yes, exactly. That is how I feel about it. Exactly that.
This because, as noted above, the corporation was incorporated pre-1971 and has remained a resident in Canada at all times until the present day. Prior to the continuation, they argue that Somerset met the definition of a case incorporation under both 89(1)(a) and (b). After the continuation, they argue that Somerset still meets the definition under 89(1)(b).
Okay.
Why is the respondent they? Sorry. Second, the respondent argues that because of Somerset continuation in the BVI, the deeming rule in subsection 255.1 is determinative. Somerset met the definition of a King's incorporation after continuation. Subsection 255.1 deems Somerset to have been incorporated in the BVI in 1943, while always remaining resident in Canada. Somerset therefore meets the definition of a King's incorporation in paragraph 89(1)(b).
Huh.
I'm so confused right now.
I'm really confused by this. Okay.
In the alternative, if the court does not find that Somerset remains a CCPC, the Crown submits that the application of the GAR should deny tax benefits. This because Somerset's continuation to BVI frustrated
Okay.
Parliament's anti-deferral policy and was an abuse.
Okay, so paragraph
avoidance
15 is just
transaction.
if you don't think so. But can we just go back up to paragraph 14 here? Look at this. Subsection 255.1 is determinative. Somerset met the definition of a Canadian corporation after the continuation. Subsection 255.1 deems Somerset to have been incorporated in the BVI in 1943 while always remaining resident in Canada. Somerset therefore meets the definition of a Canadian corporation in paragraph 89(1)(b). So first of all, every reference is correct in this paragraph, so thank you very much. Every reference is correct. Yes, I appreciate that. But also, what we're getting is the respondent saying that the term Canadian corporation was still met despite subsection 255.1. So we're going to find out later why
I'm
they...
very curious right now.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
5.1 deems that you were a resident
Yeah.
in BVI
Yeah.
since the inception, since
Exactly.
1943. That's how it works.
Yeah, never incorporated in Canada, so therefore, Yeah, exactly. So, this is a little strange, but okay. Okay. What's the matter? What's the matter?
Oh no, I was just thinking.
You're thinking. you got your thinking face on.
Sorry, I needed the.
You got your thinking face on. And now we're thinking. Oh, I think I just switched you. Okay, there we go.
Because that's interesting.
Yeah,
You
well,
are.
we need the statute. I can't even have this conversation because I don't know what the statute says now after reading that.
Like, I kind of know the statute. I'm like, this
I want
is
to
the
reread it.
pre-1971 thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the pre-1971 thing, even though you were incorporated, there's a thing in the act that before 1971, if you were a resident in Canada, you were a Canadian corporation.
Oh. Oh. Okay. So see, I told you this is a residence case. Okay. That's why. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Okay, good. All right. So we're here saying that they, at all times until the present day, they met the definition of a Canadian corporation. They still meet the definition of a Canadian corporation after the continuation. Okay. And so now that was paragraph 14, and now we're on 15. In the alternative, then if you don't agree with us, then it's GAR. And then we move on. Yeah.
The appellant's position.
Okay.
The taxpayer. So the appellant submits that by effecting continuation into the BVI pursuant to subsection 255.1 of the Act, the appellant was no longer a Canadian corporation and thus no longer a CCPC subject to
Subsection
123.3 taxes. Specifically, the appellant contends that at the moment of the continuation, Somerset ceased to be a CCPC because it was no longer a Canadian corporation as defined in subsections 248.1 and 89.1 of the Act.
Yeah. Now, without looking at the statute again, I would have said, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. Okay.
The appellant argues that Somerset no longer comes within the definition of a Canadian corporation for one of two reasons. First, because it is no longer captured by the definition of Canadian corporation at paragraph 89.1a of the Act. This is because, after continuation, Somerset is deemed to have been incorporated in the BVI on May 26, 1943. The definition of Canadian corporation in 89.1a only applies to a corporation that was in fact incorporated in Canada.
Okay.
The appellant further argues that it is not captured by paragraph 1891b of the definition of Canadian corporation because that provision only applies to corporations that were factually incorporated outside of Canada,
Actually.
which the appellant was not.
Okay.
But 255.1 deems you to be incorporated abroad. So, what is this factually test?
Yeah. We need to see. Yep.
Okay.
We're almost there. We're almost
Concerning
there.
the application of GAR, the appellant submit that this matter should be distinguished from DAC because of the availability of an alternative transaction. Specifically, the appellant could have been incorporated in a country different from Canada in 1943.
Now, this is interesting because this is a case of the taxpayer trying to use the GAR to help themselves.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like that idea.
But also, isn't it true in DAC also that could have been incorporated in the BVI?
Absolutely, yes. Yes. So off we go, but now finally we get to statutory interpretation. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm...
Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the studio. What is going on here?
I'm having a little fun with the cameras.
Okay. There we go. Now we're all there together. Yeah, nice. Okay. Statutory interpretation of subsection 89.1 and followed immediately by something that is not subsection 89.1.
The relevant provision of subsection 125.7
Oh, my
provides.
word. Okay. But can you see how the heading doesn't match? Like, you could have just said statutory interpretation of relevant sections, and then it would make sense. But you say you're going to do statutory interpretation of section, you don't even give me a unit, subsection 89.1, and then you jump into the relevant provision. I have a hard time following, okay? I'm just having a hard time following. That's all. That's all I'm saying is I'm having a hard time following. Okay, so, but we continue. The relevant provision of subsection 125(7) provides what? Why
What?
are we even here?
When? When? What one? One what?
Uh,
Wait, is it a matter of the PDF not showing?
I don't know. Let's investigate. Yeah, let's investigate. If you show it here, we might be able to see it on screen actually.
Oh, well, it's Adobe that is open, so.
Okay. Let's find it.
That's weird. I'm kind of hearing something.
Silent? It's the sound of. Is it? What's his name? The 4 minutes of silence guy. What's that guy's name? Nash. Is that what just happened? Oh yeah, I hear an echo. Yeah.
Yeah. Ah. I was not crazy.
No, you're never.
I was hearing
Never,
something.
never would you be crazy. Never, never.
Sorry, I was contemplating this idea.
Okay, we could show the the screen a little bit better, and then we can see what's going on here. Where were we? Paragraph. No, that's too far. I think.
No,
Ah,
we
no.
were there.
Okay, good. Ah, yeah.
It's
look at
actually that.
Okay, so then can you switch over to the statute, like the ITA?
Sure.
And maybe something's going on here that we're not understanding. It's very strange.
I'm pretty sure
You can't
I've
really see. It's too bright on screen. So I'm
never
just not-
seen a provision looking like that.
No, I think
Also,
something's...
I have a complaint
Okay.
for the people of the IT at the Department of Justice. It's a mess to find a
Yes,
provision.
it's hard to find a provision. I know. If you Google search the actual provision, it will take you to it, though.
Oh, no, 125.7.
Yeah.
120. I was actually looking at.
I know,
at
you can't- yeah.
89 because I thought it was 89, but no, it's 125.7. So 125.7 looks like
7, and then it's a definition. That's why. Okay.
what?
So what's the definition we're looking for? 125.7. The relevant provision provides.
We are not going to read the provision. It's a summary of the provision.
Okay.
Because it's not.
Okay.
It's a. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Fine.
Fine.
Okay. Okay. This is okay. I
Mystery solved.
we were just a bit confused.
Okay. Down the rabbit hole and back out again. Here we go. All right.
Okay, and let's put the camera back on me and read this. So the relevant provision of
Okay,
subsection
but
125.7 provides, not reads,
Right.
provides.
It provides.
One,
Yes.
Canadian controlled private corporation means a private corporation that is a Canadian corporation other than a corporation controlled directly or indirectly in any manner whatever by one or more non-resident persons, by one or more public corporation other than prescribed by
I just
any
feel like this is
corporation,
just repeating exactly
by
what
one
the
or more
statute says.
corporation described in paragraph C or any combination of them. 2. A corporation that would, if each share of the capital stock of the corporation that is owned by a non-resident person by a public corporation other than a venture corporation or by a corporation described in paragraph C were owned by a particular person, be controlled by the particular person. 3. A corporation, a class of the shares of the capital stock of which is listed on a designated stock exchange or in applying subsection 1 paragraphs 87 to VV, which is not W, and WW. Is it like triple U's? I don't know, including for greater certainty in applying those paragraphs as provided under paragraph 88(1)(e)(2), the definitions excessive eligible dividend designation, general rate of distribution pool, and low rate income pool in subsection 89(1), subsection 89(4) to 6, 8 to 10, and 2
Et
for
cetera, et cetera.
90.1, and blah, blah, blah.
Okay, can I just make a point of order? Can you go back up? The relevant provision of subsection 125.7 provides exactly these words, except that it's paragraphs A, B, and D
Of a definition.
of the definition of Canadian-controlled private corporation, and it is just skipped paragraph C of that definition, and there's no reason why this should have any other numbering than that.
Okay, let's rewrite this paragraph just for fun.
Right, it should
I would
say, yes.
So
Yep.
the definition
Wait,
of gains and
here, it's not
control,
on you,
private
so hang on.
corporation. The definition.
Wait a minute.
well,
You're
I'm
2?
Three.
Oh, you're 3.
2 is studio. 3 is me.
Okay, there you go. Now you're on.
So the definition of gains and control private corporation at subsection 125.7 provides A,
You could
B,
say
C, D.
irrelevant part provides. Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Exactly.
That's the whole
That's my
thing.
point. Exactly. That's literally, it says exactly what the statute provides. You're quoting the statute.
And it's just right now. I'm
It's
thinking
very
it's
confusing.
not the statute.
Exactly. So then I have to go check the statute, and that is an unnecessary complication.
Yeah.
Okay. Continue. Additionally.
Unnecessary complications.
Yes.
Problem. Yeah. But it's only a problem if you read it out loud and you're like.
Yeah, what's going on? Yeah.
Additionally, subsection 248.1 provides that a CCPC has the meaning assigned by subsection 125.7 and further states that Canadian corporation has the meaning assigned by subsection 89.1.
Yep.
There is a quote here, and 248.1 is the definition provision. So
Yes.
that's the definition of what? Because I think that 248.1 CCPC provides that CCPC has the meaning assigned by 125.7,
Yeah.
and that Canadian corporation, the definition of Canadian corporation is that Canadian corporation has the meaning assigned by subsection 89.1. So I don't understand the quote.
Not only that, but can you look at the heading here? Now says the relevant law, subsection 89.1. Can you just go back up to the prior heading? Come on now. Come now.
It's okay.
It's not okay. That's not okay. Yes, I struggle to read it because I understand that a point is being made here. A point is being made that we need to interpret words in the statute, and we have a definition, Canadian controlled private corporation, which has 4 words in it. Canadian, controlled, private, and corporation. And each one of those words has to be defined. Each one is iterative, and we have definitions in different places in the Act. I get it. Like, I understand that that's an issue.
But I think the only thing we need is the definition of Canadian corporation.
Yes.
2 words.
2 words.
Canadian
corporation. And if you're saying that those words are in both subsection 248.1 and subsection 89.1, then the statutory interpretation is of all relevant provisions. And
But
yeah.
it's the your interpretation of the phrase or the expression Canadian corporation.
sure,
That's it.
that's it.
Which would be fine because if the heading is a interpretation of
Yeah.
Canadian corporation,
Yes, of
Fine.
Canadian corporation. So if this said, if V, statutory interpretation of Canadian, quote, Canadian corporation, unquote.
and now you need
Now I
okay,
have
but
no-
why
yes.
are we doing this? Because
Yes.
it's in the CCPC
That's
definition.
it. Exactly. All of a
It's in
sudden everything
248,
makes
and
sense.
248 goes back to 89.
Exactly.
That's
and then you have the relevant law, subsection 89.1, and now we're going to
Good.
talk about the words of subsection 89.1.
Let's go.
Great.
The issue is whether the appellant is caught by a paragraph 89.1b definition, by the paragraph 89.1b definition of Canadian corporation,
Yeah.
by the definition of Canadian
Caught
corporation
by
at
the
paragraph
definition.
89.1b.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the other way around.
Yeah, okay.
Thus, the question to be answered is whether a pre-1971 Canadian resident corporation that has continued into a jurisdiction but otherwise remains a resident in Canada is caught by paragraph B
See?
of the Canadian
They
corporation
knew it was a
definition.
paragraph. At the end of the paragraph, they knew it was a paragraph. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Oh, I get it because no, it's not any. Oh, oh, no, that's not it. That's not how you quote.
Yeah.
It's
Subsection 89.
paragraph B.
Yes.
It's paragraph B of,
Of
the
the
definition
definition
of
of-
Canadian corporation
exactly.
at subsection 89.1.
Exactly. So you could cite this as subsection 89.1, Canadian Corporation,
B.
paragraph B. Yes, that is correct. And it is not subsection 89.1b because there is no subsection
not find
89(1)(b).
it.
Yes,
But
correct.
the real proper way would paragraph B of the definition
Yes.
of at paragraph whatever.
That's
of subsection whatever in this case.
We're begging for some coherence here. But anyway, paragraph B of the Canadian corporation definition is correct.
But
That is
it's,
correct.
It's important. It's not just a matter of we're picky because I'm right now I was expecting a definition being at 89(1)(b).
Yes.
And now it's like, no, it's B of the definition
Yes.
of 89(1). It's like, it's
Exactly, so that we know we're talking about the one that you numbered up above, numbered as 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's do a little meditation break. The relevant portion of subsection 89(1) definition of Canadian corporation reads as follows. Canadian corporation at any time means a corporation that is resident in Canada at that time and was A, incorporated in Canada, or B, resident in Canada throughout the period that began on June 18, 1971 and that ends at that time.
Okay.
That's it, bam. Forget A, 255.1 will tell you it's deemed to be incorporated in BVI.
Yeah.
But you are resident in 1943.
Yeah, but the period that begins on 1971 and ends at whatever time you're trying to determine.
To do a test, yeah.
Yeah.
So because you were resident on June 18, 1971,
Yeah.
you can, there is no way.
That you were never not a resident.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now we're going to do statutory interpretation.
Okay, but to me it's like, it's enough. Like, it's so clear.
Right, but I'm just going to be annoyed again at the heading, which is, again, the exact same heading. Exactly the same as the one above.
Where is
Look at it. Go up, go up, go up.
But I have
No,
a-
the
I
V,
have a- I
V.
have a question.
Look at this.
So-
Statutory interpretation of 89.1, and now look at our subheading, statutory interpretation of 89.1. Come on, get serious right now. This is not... You just got to edit. That's all. You got to reread and edit and check. Anyway,
Yeah, okay.
those of us who read cases out loud notice these things, and we ask the clerks of every court to be attentive. That's all we're asking. Reread. Just check it. Just check it.
I really like the mode in Word where you see the text.
Yes.
With the headings.
I know, but they
and-
might not be able to do that. You got to do a hard read. You got to do a serious close attention. That's all there is to it.
Oh no, my camera is everyone is asleep.
What happened?
My camera is asleep.
Oh my gosh.
Why is my camera asleep?
Okay, well,
Wake
we're
up.
still alive, so just turn OBS bot off and back on again, and we'll
Wake
come
up.
back.
Oh,
Whoop, there we go. We're looking at the board. We're looking around the room. Hello, everyone.
okay. We have to figure out why it does this.
Yeah, I don't. There's some kind of weird. I don't know. Who knows?
Maybe when it's not in use for some time, it goes to sleep.
I don't think so. Like, as long as they're on, they should all be on. But hey, what do I know?
C2 is asleep.
Yeah, 2's asleep. Yep.
And now we lost electricity, so sorry. I'm just gonna fix Hydro-Québec right now. Why 2? Why are you asleep? Oh, here you go. We are back.
Isn't that? I've lost track of which one is which now.
Oh, I know.
Okay.
Okay, statutory interpretation of
Okay.
89.1. Recently,
Yes.
strikingly, recently, the FC provided guidance in statutory interpretation in Hunt versus Canada.
Okay.
2026
Guidance on
CA
statutory interpretation
88.
in Hunt v. Canada. Okay. Should we maybe send a corrections copy? Guidance on. Okay. Yep. Is it guidance in? Do you think it's guidance in? Okay, whatever. Anyway, continue.
I think it's okay.
It doesn't matter. It's fine.
Exactly.
I give up.
It's okay. I'm trying to not have a nervous breakdown.
Exactly. Okay.
I'm in peace. It's okay. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Except the proper way of naming the provisions.
Right.
I don't know. What is better, being wrong or just putting S everywhere?
Let's keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Today, however,
Today, however, we have a great deal of stability. A recent series of consistent Supreme Court cases deserve the credit.
Oh,
In the process of analyzing text, context, and purpose, the text is the anchor to the interpreter's exercise. Who would have thought?
yeah,
What are you doing? You're interpreting the text.
yeah. Breaking news.
Québec, Commission des droits de la personne et des droits de la jeunesse, compte directrice de la protection de la jeunesse du CI3SA 2024, CSC 43, citing Mr. Mancini. The purpose error in the modern approach to statutory interpretation. See also the excellent analysis by Mr. Mancini, text as anchor in statutory interpretation to be published in the Keynesian Bar Review. Many Supreme Court cases just before and just after CISSS A have faithfully followed this methodology and are admirably consistent. See Telecommunication versus Wellman,
Okay.
Rafilovich, Media QME contre Kamel.
I'm not really sure why this is so striking. I mean,
It is striking
obviously
that they are thinking it is striking. Picot versus Canada, Acon Carignan, Kozicki versus
I don't get it.
Morrow, and many others. I think like Cops, is it Trusco? Trusco has pretty much settled the case of how to do statutory interpretation, but
yeah.
apparently this CI3S case is striking,
Okay.
stringing
Alright.
all of these. While the text is the anchor of the exercise, the context of the words in which legislation can shed light on the meaning of the text and sometimes can result from ambiguities in the text. And the same is true for the legislative purpose. A court must consider the context and purpose of the provision, no matter how plain the disposition may seem upon initial reading. Canada Trustco.
Okay. Good tax
See
case.
also Atco Gas and Pipelines versus Alberta,
Okay.
and Williams versus Canada. But where the language is clear and unambiguous and unaffected by considerations of context and purpose, it must be given its effect, and the element of purpose cannot be used to create an unexpressed exception to clear language, which was arguably the case in Wilson, Placer Dome, Canada versus Ontario, and policy considerations cannot be permitted to distort the actual words of the statute, read harmoniously within the scheme of the statute, its subject, and its intention with the legislature,
Okay.
so as to make the provision say something it does not. Telecommunications. I'm fine with that. Courts must also consider both official language versions of the legislation. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Picot, Schreiber. In this case, there is no substantive difference between English and French versions.
Okay.
Of section 207.01, 2.05.
Okay. Well, of the
and
ones that were relevant in
7,
that
yeah.
case. Okay.
The respondent argues that the words of
No.
paragraph
No, because again, it's subsection 89.1 definition of Canadian corporation, paragraph B.
the words of paragraph
Yeah.
it's the paragraph 89.1 in
Yeah.
corporation B,
Yeah.
which
yeah.
is technically improper. It's not even the
yeah.
good way, but
In any event,
the good way is long.
the good way is long. So paragraph B of the definition of
Yeah.
Canadian corporation found in subsection 89.1.
But honestly, what I like to do is 89.1 quote in
Yeah.
corporation B
Yes, that is
It's good
correct.
enough.
That's good.
are precise and unequivocal.
Fine.
Looking at this thing in
Yeah.
isolation, the respondent is correct. A plain reading of this provision would mean that any corporation that was a resident in Canada pre-1971 would always remain a Canadian corporation despite any deeming provision under subsection 255.1 of the Act. They argue that the legislation is not concerned with the place of incorporation, only that the corporation was a resident in Canada throughout the period that ended on June 18, 1971. upon
Okay,
the
can we
present
go back up? I'm not sure I read that
time.
correctly.
There's a footnote, Crown submission.
To the statute itself? Resident in Canada throughout the period that began on 1971 and ends
At
at
the time of the
a different
test.
time. Not that ends on 1971 if you
Well,
were...
No.
Uh,
You look at 1971,
Right,
you
and
look
then-
at the time you're doing the test,
Yeah,
and
you
are
say,
you
were you a resident?
for all this?
Right. So what are we talking about here?
Okay, let me reread this.
The respondent argues that the words of this provision B are precise and unequivocal, that a plain reading would mean that any corporation that was a resident in Canada pre-1971... No, that's not what it says.
No. only that the corporation was a resident in Canada throughout the period that ended on June 18.
No. Yeah, no.
It begins on June 18.
Beginning. Look at the
So
period
the
that
began on
began.
June 18.
What
and that
the
ends at
heck is
that
going
time.
on? What is going on
Foreign
here?
corporation at any time means a corporation is resident in Canada at that time, the time we're doing the test, and was resident in Canada throughout the period that began on June 18 and ends at that time.
Well, how could the respondent argue that it's the opposite of what it says? I'm not understanding this. Respondent argues that any corporation that was a resident in Canada pre-1971 would always remain a Canadian corporation despite. They argued that the legislation is not concerned with the placement, only that the corporation was resident in Canada throughout the period that ended.
Began.
What?
That began.
Up to the present time. Is there just a mistake here?
I think that's just a mistake. I think.
That it should say begins?
Begins or began
On
June
June
18 up to the
Okay, paragraph 26.
up to the time of the test. Like
Began, not end. Okay.
I disagree
Okay.
with not me, but Justice McPhee.
Yes, Justice McPhee disagrees.
I disagree with the interpretation of that thing.
Yeah.
We must look at the entirety of that thing, and of I get that subsection now. All the definitions.
Yes.
What is it going to look at in discerning the meaning of the legislation? Crucially, in the English version, paragraphs A and B of the definition are joined by or.
Okay.
Discerning whether the or is disjunctive or subjunctive is a necessary step in this analysis.
Okay.
Okay. Or disjunctive or conjunctive? I guess it's a question. But I have a further question.
Okay.
The or between disjunctive and conjunctive, is it a disjunctive or a conjunctive or?
My head hurts. Okay, so let's just keep reading and find out what's going on.
I'm really
here.
confused. It's the first time I see this, that or could be disjunctive or conjunctive.
I'm not sure even what is meant by these two terms.
I have to go look into the dictionary. I don't know. Okay, but let's read. There is some case law. Okay, in Osh.
Osh. Yep.
Maybe it's German. It's like Hoch.
Could be.
Oh versus the Queen. I'm sorry, Mr. Och. Or maybe it's Hosh. Or it's like French and it's like Osh. Osh contre la reine.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, whoever that is. I probably butchered your name right here. So I do apologize to Mrs. or Mr. Hosh.
Osh. Okay.
I was called upon to do a similar analysis.
Okay.
Can I just confirm one thing, that Hosh was by Justice McPhee?
Yeah, I assume.
I assume, right?
Right.
Okay.
You want me to check?
let's-
But yeah, okay, I'll check.
Let's read.
Just you
I
read and I'll
assume
check.
Justice McPhee's
Yeah.
in Hosh. The Oxford English Dictionary states that or is used to coordinate two or more sentence elements between which there is an alternative. In Russell, Chief Justice Bowman, as he then was, analyzed whether or was disjunctive or conjunctive in the context of subsection 255.51 of the Act. Chief Justice Bowman found that or in the ordinary sense is prima facie disjunctive. Yet or can also be conjunctive in limited circumstances. For example, the use of or between paragraph 6.6a and 6.6b indicates that the tax-free treatment of payment in respect of employment and at special work sites or remote location apply if one or both of the conditions under A and B are met. However, this is not the case for the or in subparagraph 8.1c 3 lies. The existence of the comma before or at the end of subparagraph 8.1c 3 lies is an important interpretative aid indicating that this or is disjunctive. In Matthew, Chief Justice Rip, as he then was, examined paragraphs 891a and 91b of the Act, which are similarly drafted as subparagraphs 8.1c3 lies, 8.1c4 lies. Chief Justice Rip found the presence of a comma opens the door to a disjunctive interpretation. Canada versus Manitoba per Justice Joyal, the placement of a comma before the word or at the end of paragraph 91A is clearly intended to create a disjunction between paragraphs 91A and 91B. In this instance, the or between 98.1 paragraph A, B of the definition is disjunctive. Paragraph 91 describes two different scenarios. Paragraph A of the definition of any corporation refers to corporation incorporated and resident in Canada at that time. I accept that the appellant's position that B applies only to corporation not incorporated in Canada. Okay, so the question is, can A and B apply at the same time, or is it A or B separately?
Okay, so a conjunctive
Yes.
structure would say you are I'm not even sure I can construct this.
Let's go back to this.
You're incorporated in Canada or you're resident in Canada. Then either way you're a Canadian corporation.
But or you can corporation if you're both incorporated in Canada
Yes.
and resident in Canada.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So either one makes you a Canadian corporation.
And
What are we
just
asking ourselves? I'm not even sure why we're asking ourselves this question.
because in 8.1c, it's disjunctive, which means, I guess, that if you respect both, then you're not in the provision?
Okay, if you keep reading, I think you see the
Okay.
Justice McPhee's view of things, but
In this
Yeah.
instance, the or between A and B of the definition is disjunctive. Paragraph 89.1 describes two different scenarios. Paragraph A of the definition of any corporation refers to corporation incorporated and resident in Canada at the time. I accept the appellant's position that B applies to any corporation not incorporated in Canada. Oh. Oh, yeah. Okay. Why? Of course.
okay.
If you're incorporated in Canada, you don't need to go to B. You're already in A.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Notably, the French version, French version, I like that, of the Canadian corporation definition, including in subsequent 9.1, does not include the word ou, or.
Okay.
Rather, the portion of the definition of Société Canadienne in paragraph 9.1 of the French version of the Income Tax Act reads as follows. Société canadienne. À un moment donné, société qui réside au Canada et qui, soit a été constituée au Canada, soit a résidé au Canada tout au long de la période qui a commencé le 18 juin 1971 et se termine à ce moment. I like
Okay.
the soit, it's like or. It's like it's either this or this.
Okay. So what? Either way, you're a Canadian corporation.
I guess the question is, can I be both?
Sure,
if
but
I'm
who
both?
cares? Who cares?
Because it's soit. So if I'm both,
Oh my
I'm not a
gosh.
Canadian corporation.
It actually hurts me. This kind of analysis, it hurts because I have no idea what
It
is the
makes
problem.
no sense.
What is the problem?
Okay, so what
Okay.
I guess the question is, and I'm not sure, but I'm gonna take a guess, and I'm gonna put the music on. I guess the question is, if I am both incorporated and I was a resident throughout the time,
Yeah.
can I be a Canadian corporation knowing that it's either one or B? So if I'm both, I'm not a Canadian corporation. But of course not. That doesn't make sense.
Oh my
So
goodness.
all
okay.
Canadian corporations that were incorporated in Canada and were resident in 1971
are
are not Canadian
Canadian.
corporations.
That's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Text context purpose. That doesn't make sense.
Okay.
But I guess that reading the French version, it kind of seemed like that. But no, please, no. It hurts.
It does. I agree.
Oh.
Painful. All right. So
It
then
sounds
what's
like- it
okay?
sounds-
So but there's a continuation of
It
the.
sounds so like
I know.
I found
it's
the argument.
I know. Yeah.
I found it. Rough questions.
Yeah.
If you're both
Then you're
incorporated in
neither.
Canada,
Then you're
and
neither.
and also you were resident in
Then you're
1971,
neither. If you're
were
both,
the
you're
two.
neither.
But the or is disjunctive. Okay.
No, it's
It
not
can
okay.
be both. So if you're both, you're neither.
I cannot with this. I cannot. No.
Ooh.
No, you cannot tell me that that's the argument. You cannot.
Who made this argument?
The appellant? The appellant. That
Or is it just a
I don't
judge
know.
making this argument?
I don't know.
Out of
I
the-
don't know.
Is it some? Is
But
someone-
it's not done. The argument's not done. Here's 31, the French version.
I just want to know if someone was in court saying. "Mr.
If you're both, you're
Justice,
neither.
If you're
Come
both,
on.
you're neither.
There's
okay?
no way.
Because it's a disjunctive or not conjunctive. It's
I-
very
ca-
different.
It's
not the
not.
same
If,
or.
if that is an argument, then we are not speaking the same language.
It just seems so.
Pedantic?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's see what he says. Let's give him another chance.
The French version of the legislation could possibly be interpreted as broader than the English version. In dealing with this possible contradiction, I rely upon guidance provided by the Supreme Court, which has found that there were one version of the legislation is which has found that where one version of the legislation is broader than the other, the narrower version shared meaning is usually preferred, according to Peacock and also Professor Jeffrey
Oh.
Loomer.
Okay.
Cool, I agree with that. Therefore, I take into account the disjunctive nature of paragraphs A and B found in the English version of the incorporation definition. Paragraph B is meant to capture any corporation resident in Canada before June 1971 if they were not incorporated in Canada, while paragraph A is meant to capture all corporations that were incorporated in Canada before and after June 1971. While the text is the inquiry and the exercise, we must also consider the legislative purpose of subsection 89.1.
Okay.
I really like paragraph 32. Like, this is a good conclusion to this nonsensical argument.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, good. I agree. It is the first thing that has made sense and that it didn't make me want to tear my hair out in the last several paragraphs.
Actually, I think I might add this weird argument to my methodology class, just because it's kind of far-fetched, but also it's like, okay, but why is it not this weird argument that
Yeah.
we want to prevail?
Right. Yeah.
Like, why doesn't it make sense that if you're both, you're neither?
Yeah.
Okay. The applicable technical notes from the 1971 tax reform concerning paragraph B of the definition stated that corporations not resident in Canada but not incorporated in Canada will be considered Canadian corporations for all intents and purposes as long as they remain resident. The provision applies only to foreign corporations resident in Canada on budget day 1971. In future, a corporation must be incorporated in Canada to be classified as a Canadian corporation and to obtain certain benefits of the new system. And this is technical notes.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
submissions, the appellant has provided various commentary in support of their interpretation of paragraph B of the definition, which I have found helpful and accept. For reasons, for example, see Canada Tax Services on TaxNet Pro, Section 89.1, Canadian Corporation.
Okay, we're going to use a secondary source to...
What is it? Is this Sherman?
Eh,
Canada Tax Service?
I have no idea.
Subsection 89.1 defines a Canadian corporation for the purposes of subdivision H, pursuant to subsection 248.1. The meaning given to Canadian corporation when used elsewhere in the Act is the same as that set out in subsection 89.1. A Canadian corporation is one which is resident in Canada and either was incorporated in Canada or, if not incorporated in Canada, has been resident in Canada continuously from June 18, 1971. See commentary to subsection 2.1 regarding the determination of corporate residence. And we added nothing to the analysis.
Literally added nothing.
Finally,
Yep.
I further rely upon the analysis provided by the tax court in SIPEM, UK Limited versus the Queen. Subsection 89.1 therefore sets out two ways in which a corporation can be a Canadian corporation. It provides a corporation must be resident in Canada and have been incorporated in Canada, or that a corporation not incorporated in Canada must have been a resident in Canada since at least June 1971 to be considered a Canadian corporation. Good luck. You're so good. You can read the law and restate the law in the same words as the law and add nothing to the analysis. Sorry, we're a bit harsh on the court.
It says the exact same thing.
We just read the exact same thing
Three times in a row. Yeah.
Like, this is the law. Oh, by the way, someone said it's the law. The law is the law.
Right.
And also, we have a judgment saying that the law says the law is the law.
Yeah.
That the law says the law. You think the law says it is the law.
Maybe it's just the way that they're saying it. They're saying,
Well, I think what the TextNet Pro thing added is the word either.
yeah, they're adding the word either there.
I mean, I kind of like the word either because.
So maybe it's helpful in the, if you didn't read that secondary source, you could now be caught up in the whether this is
disjunctive
whatever this
or
means.
thing.
And here, the secondary source is saying resident and incorporated or always resident from 71
Yeah.
till now. Resident and
I
resident.
think it's a better
Meaning-
way than the law.
Yeah, and the explanation why you need the resident and resident. Why do you need the resident and resident?
Because if you're
Stream.
incorporating in Canada, you want to be resident as well.
No, but you're not incorporated in Canada, but you're resident and resident. In other words,
Oh, you don't need the first resident. if
well,
we
that's the
apply?
question. That's the question. And I think that I think Justice McPhee tried to explain this a couple paragraphs back, where he touched teeny tiny bit on the history. So if he says, the applicable technical notes, corporations now resident in Canada, so in 1971,
Yes.
corporations that are now resident in Canada but were not incorporated in Canada, they are now resident but they were not incorporated here.
Yeah, but isn't
They
it
will-
true that our moment donné, because it's at a time, isn't it true that the resident test here could be an A, and that would change the provision since you also have a resident throughout the period in B? What if Canadian corporation at any time means a corporation that that is resident in Canada and was incorporated in Canada, or resident in Canada throughout the period that began on June 1897 and ends at that time?
Yeah, but look at the construction of B. Canadian corporation anytime means a corporation that is resident in Canada at that time and was a resident in Canada throughout the period that began in 1971 and ends at that time. So they're saying you're a Canadian corporation if you're a Canadian corporation at that moment, at some moment,
Yeah,
and you have been a Canadian corporation since 1971.
I'm just thinking if you were
Resident.
resident in Canada throughout the period that began June 1881 and ends at that time, necessarily you are a resident in Canada
Exactly.
at that time.
That's my point.
It's like a doubling.
It appears to be totally duplicative. And the finance thing is trying to explain it. So if you go back down to the finance, which I do take to be a useful analysis.
I love the beige
Corporation.
book.
Sorry?
I love the beige book.
Yeah. Who doesn't? Who doesn't love the beige book? So here we get the note. Corporations, now just put yourself in 1971. We're in 1971. Think flower, children, and yeah, the Vietnam War and things like this.
Why 1971?
You need to put on the studio so everybody can see what you are doing there. Okay. 1971. Right. Okay. Now put yourself in 1971. We're in 1971 now. Right. If you are currently resident in Canada, but you were not incorporated in Canada, you will be considered a Canadian corporation as long as you stay resident. So why this happened, there's a hint, a clue, but it's not explained. Okay. And then it says the provision applies only to foreign corporations resident in Canada on budget day 1971. In future, a corporation must be incorporated in Canada in order to be classified as a Canadian corporation and to obtain certain benefits in the new system. So it's a grandfather clause, says the technical notes. It says, from now on, after 1971, you have to be incorporated in Canada and resident in Canada to be a Canadian corporation. But if you're a pre-existing corporation that was a resident in Canada before 1971, we're going to bring you in. We're going to bring you into this resident in Canada. If you're resident in Canada and you were resident in Canada before 1971. And the date, budget day 1971. Okay. So now if we go back down to the TaxNet Pro thing, maybe the reason to use this, even though I think it says exactly the same thing that we just read, it says...
I like this part.
Yeah, exactly. If you weren't incorporated in Canada, but you have been since budget day, you have been resident since budget day, or I don't even know if budget day was June 18. Could that be the day before?
Presumably it was.
Or the day before?
Usually it's budget
whatever,
day.
yeah. So, and the conjunctive disjunctive, I don't know what's added by that. I'm confused by the conjunctive disjunctive because I don't know whether, I just don't care about it that much.
Well, it's kind of, it doesn't make sense to say if you're both, you're neither. Like,
it's a little bit strange, but we could see now, after having done this exhaustive searching for sources that say the same thing, that the resident and resident construction means you're resident now and you have been resident since 1971. It's the grandfather part. And if you're resident now, but you have only been resident since 1989, then you're not a Canadian corporation.
yeah, but I kind of think that the way it's written, you could have dropped the first resident and put it in A, since if you're a resident throughout the period that ends at that time, necessarily you are a resident at that time.
Exactly. So that is why it is confusing, and that is why the both is neither weirdness could even potentially arise.
Yes.
I still can't make it read that way, but I do understand where it's coming from. All
If I
right.
look in French, it says, you know, à un moment nécessaire qui réside au Canada
Yeah.
et qui soit a été construit au Canada.
And soit means
Soit is like,
isn't it?
oh, it's like it's either one or B. So the argument, if it's soit, it cannot be A and B, because you're not soit or soit.
Okay,
you're
yeah.
two together.
Yeah.
But it's
One or
it
the
should
other.
have been if you are not incorporated in Canada, comma, has reside, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
There could have been a better way.
Fine, sure. As always.
But
As
also
always.
this is a bit of a far-fetched argument. I
Yeah,
think.
it is. Yeah. Okay.
let's
So
go back.
finally, after SciPem UK, then I find, right? Then I
I
find.
therefore find that the appellant's initial interpretation
Yeah.
of B is correct. Prior to the continuation, Somerset meets the definition of a Canadian corporation under A, but not B, because it was incorporated in Canada. Yet it is not the end of the analysis. As set out below, after the continuation, Somerset meets the definition of Canadian corporation under B, but not A. Because of
Because of
255.1,
yeah,
because it's a
exactly.
Uchronia and you never were incorporated in
Right.
Canada. So now you always
have to be
B under
as
B.
if, yeah, exactly.
Okay, I'm okay.
Okay.
Okay,
I
we're
mean,
going
it's-
somewhere.
It's pulling together. It's starting
We're
to
going
come
somewhere.
together. Yes.
Effect of the deeming provision in paragraph 255.1a.
Beautiful heading.
Perfect.
Perfect. A plus. Yes.
You say there is some work going on, like it's getting better.
Yes.
The legislation which deems the appellant to have been incorporated in the BVI reads as follows. Continued corporation.
Yep.
5.1, where corporation is at any time in this subsection referred to as the time of continuation, granted articles of continuance or similar constitutional documents in a particular jurisdiction, the corporation shall A, for the purposes of applying this act other than subsection 254, in respect of all times from the time of continuation until the time, if any, continuation in the different jurisdiction be deemed to have been incorporated into particular jurisdiction and not to have been incorporated in any other jurisdiction.
Yeah.
You incorporate in the BVI, you continue in the BVI, you were always incorporated in the BVI.
You know what it is? It's
Uchronia.
a magic wand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because your magic wand says, if you continue into BVI, ta-da, you always were incorporated in the BVI. Yes.
He always was.
Always.
Always. So A never applied.
Correct. That is the idea. Yeah. Even though it did. But yes.
It did, but it did not.
But until the moment it didn't, and then it never did.
But you thought that A applied, but by virtue
That's why
of the Uchronia,
magic.
A never applied.
It's magic.
So you couldn't have a judgment saying A applies, and it
could
would
not.
be wrong.
Yes,
A
that's correct.
never, ever applies
That's
since
right.
1943.
That's right. Oh, goodness. Okay.
And for some reason, this makes more sense than the disjunctive or.
Yeah, for me, yes. We're speaking like plain, ordinary language. It's a little easier to follow, yeah.
Okay. The appellant wishes to rely only upon the part of this provision which provides an advantage.
Yeah.
That the pluses, but not the minuses.
Yes.
That is, because of the deeming provision, the appellant rightfully claims that Somerset no longer meets the definition of a Canadian corporation under A of the definition, since Somerset is deemed to be incorporated outside of Canada. Yet the appellant further argues that the deeming corporation in the BVI should not be interpreted, so that Somerset becomes a foreign incorporated entity with residence in Canada prior to 1971, and therefore a Canadian corporation pursuant to the definition of Canadian corporation under B of the definition. The appellant argues that Somerset must factually have been incorporated outside of Canada to meet the parameters of B.
Oh. It's a okay, so the argument okay, finally we get here. It's paragraph 40. Yeah. So now comes the argument. The appellant says it says factually incorporated outside of Canada, and the 250 sub 5.1 is a deeming rule, not a factual rule. There you go. Okay.
Okay, we're going somewhere.
Yep. We're getting somewhere now. Okay. Now we understand this controversy a little bit better.
The appellant argues that Somerset must factually have been incorporated outside Canada to meet the parameters of B. The appellant further argues that to be deemed to have done so is not sufficient.
That's it. There it is.
Of assistance in determining the consequences of a deeming provision is Sullivan and Dreger on the construction of statutes, 4th edition by Ruth Sullivan, in which at page 69 Dreger, or maybe Sullivan, wrote, when deems is used to create a legal fiction, the fiction cannot be refuted. The facts as declared by the legislature govern even in the face of irrefutable evidence to the contrary. The difficulty that arises in interpreting legal fictions is determining the scope of the fiction.
Exactly.
So it's like saying, for since the beginning of time, the sky is red.
Yes.
Was and has always been red.
Right.
It's like a thing in the ITA that Canada means and has always meant.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
Oil, sub 12 mile, whatever. Blah.
Always.
Yeah.
Parliament can do deeming provisions.
Yes.
And since the beginning of times. Since the beginning of the universe, there is no universe.
That's right. And then Parliament can deem a dog a cat, as Robert Raisin would say.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay. In this instance, the scope of the fiction is not difficult to determine. Paragraph 255.1a reads, for the purposes of applying this act, other than subsection 254, in respect of all times from the time of continuation until this time, the time, if any, of continuation in a different jurisdiction be deemed to have been incorporated in the particular jurisdiction and not to have been incorporated in any other jurisdiction, including Canada.
Yeah.
It's not in the judgment. The wording makes it clear the deeming rule applies to all provisions of the Act except for subsection 254. Indeed, although paragraph 255.1a applies to deem the appellant to have incorporated in the BVI, the consequence of this is that the continuation applied from the original incorporation date. Thus, the appellant is deemed to have been incorporated in the BVI from May 26, 1943. As the appellant's deemed incorporation date in the BVI is May 26, 1943, the appellant is captured by paragraph B of the definition of Canadian corporation at 89.1. As such, from the time of continuation, the appellant did not cease to be a CCPC because it did not cease to be Canadian corporation.
Yep.
It simply went from being Canadian corporation under A as
of the definition,
to
yes.
Canadian corporation as defined under B.
Of the definition. Yep.
But A never applied. It has always been
I know,
B.
that's the Uchronia.
That's
exactly.
the Uchronia thing.
Yeah.
So it went from we thought A applied to B applied from
A
the outset.
never applied.
It never applied.
Just like 1984, right?
Yeah. The Parliament can say A never applied and A never applied.
And then it never
So
applied.
you thought A applied, but A never applied.
You were wrong. It never applied.
You were wrong. B always applied. And you should have known in the future that you were going to continue in the BVI. But you should have known that
Uchronia
A never
is hard.
applied and
It's
B
hard.
applied. B always applied.
We always applied.
So-
So you got to understand Uchronia, though, because you got to understand that the price of chocolate was always
Of course.
higher
Yeah.
before, and it's lower now, even if you, in your brain, you think it was higher now than it was before. You're wrong. It was always
Exactly.
the price it is now. Yeah.
So you could have had a memo saying A applies.
Yeah.
And you would have been wrong
Yes.
because you should have known that in the future B would apply and
Which
B would have always
nullifies A,
applied
yeah.
since 1943.
Exactly.
So even if you go back to 1943, you take a time machine,
Yeah. Take
you never incorporated in Canada.
Uchronia is a
But also you could continue elsewhere. You can continue
Yes.
in St. Lucia, Barbados,
right.
whatever.
You could change it again.
and it will be again since 1943.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is, I'm passionate about this
Yeah.
Uchronia thing.
The Uchronia is real.
It is
It
real.
is real.
And this is proof that Uchronia is real.
Yeah.
That you can, Parliament is allowed to deem that something happened in 1943.
But it is a good point, though, that a deeming rule always has this problem of, well, do I just deem this or do I deem all the consequences that flow from
Yeah.
that, right? So that's just where we're at. And the appellant, the respondent is arguing, you can deem me all day long, but that doesn't change the fact that I was not incorporated
Yeah.
in BVI.
Because that's kind of like, well, but I did all the corporate stuff that I had
Yes.
to do since 1943. I
Right.
paid my taxes under
Right.
A since 1943.
Yeah.
I mean, all those consequences are there.
They can't be undone because then you would be implying that I now have to go back and redo all my tax returns because they were all wrong.
Yeah. I was never incorporated in.
Yeah.
So actually, in my mind, 1971, that was a big deal. Because
deal.
I was a BVI company.
Right.
So it's like you should rewrite the timeline. It's like,
Yeah.
don't think too much about
Don't
time
think
travel.
too much about this.
because,
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
Time travel in the ITA is presumably it's possible. Contrary to real time travel, you can time travel in the ITA.
You can time travel in the ITA.
Yeah,
Come time travel with us.
we
On
are
the
time
Tax
traveling
Files.
now.
Yes, we are time travelers.
This is a time travel. I mean, it's not the tax file for nothing. Time travel.
Mysterious, but it's true. Okay.
The appellant also is not eligible for the general rate reduction because aggregate investment income is excluded for the full rate taxable under subparagraph 123.41B3 LIs.
Nice use of the term subparagraph to correctly identify that three little eyes.
Ultimately, whether the appellant is eligible for the general rate reduction depends on whether the appellant is a CCPC during the taxation years. As I have already concluded that the appellant never lost its status as a CCPC despite the continuation, its ineligibility for the rate reduction is unchanged. But it's interesting because it never lost its status, but the reason why it's a CCPC changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
Alternative general anti-avoidance argument. And also 255.1 did not exist in 1943.
I am aware of that. So there is a strange
Not only
time travel problem.
the Parliament
Yeah.
deemed something, but it deemed something that could not have happened
Right.
before.
I mean, that's the impossibility language.
Yeah.
Now we understand at the beginning why they were talking about an impossibility.
You know why we understand it now?
Yeah.
Because it's time travel.
Yeah. That's what happens when you time travel.
Now we have to go back to the beginning, and now we understand why at the beginning we did not understand, but we always understood.
always
because Now
understood.
we understand.
Now we do. Yeah.
Alternative general anti-avoidance argument. Based on my finding above, specifically that the appellant always remain a CCPC, no further analysis is required.
Right.
If I am wrong in concluding that Somerset remain a CCPC as set out below, I find that the application of the GAR in section 245 of the Act would deny the previously defined tax benefits.
Okay.
Consideration of the appellant's GAR position. Paragraph 74, 76 are from the agreed statement of facts. What? So we are reading the agreed statement
Yeah,
of
I
facts.
guess. I don't know.
If Somerset ceased to be a CCPC after the continuation, the appellant concedes that it obtained a tax benefit by continuing into the BVI.
Okay.
If Somerset ceased to be a CCPC after the continuation, its taxable income would, but for the GAR, in subsection 245.2, not be subject to tax under section 123.3, and it could avail itself of general rate reduction in section 130.4, collectively the tax benefits.
Yeah.
The only purpose of the following transactions was to obtain the tax benefits, and they were avoidance transaction as defined in subsection 245.3. A, the continuation on December 10, 2018, the incorporation of the holding companies, namely
Sure.
Windfall, JS Holding, and RGI, the director's resolution on January 31st, 2019, resulting that Somerset approved Catherine John Roberts and Robin, transferring their respective 1,345 shares to Windfall, JS Holding, RGI, and Robertman, and the Somerset February 25, 2019 payments of a dividend of the common shares holding $7.2 million.
Okay.
In addition, the appellant, in its written submissions, has provided a helpful summary describing the tax being avoided. 3.2. To understand the issue in DAC, know that CCPCs and private non-CCPCs are subject to different income tax regimes. The details are set out in DAC, TCC, at paragraph
They are.
7681.
Indeed.
They are
Yes,
indeed.
indeed.
It is not necessary to repeat them here. Private non-CCPCs are taxed on investment income. Example, Gracia rental income from the buildings at 50%, 38 minus 10 minus 13. CCPCs are taxed on aggregate investment income, all at 28% plus an additional refundable tax under Section 122.3, which was 6 2/3% when Section 122.2 was added in 1996 and increased to 10 2/3 after 2015. The result in the CCPC paying tax at 38 2/3% on all
Well,
in
it's-
2018, 2019.
But it's AII, right? It's supposed to be AII, but
Yeah,
it
but
looks
it's-
strange in here because it looks like all.
It's
But
an all. It's an L.
L's.
If you zoom in, it's
Yes, it's
definitely an L.
L's. Yeah, so that's supposed to be AII, not ALL. But hey,
That's fine.
it's all good.
fine. That's
It's all
fine.
good.
This is an easy mistake.
This is fine.
It's a fun mistake.
This is fine. The building's burning around us.
This is fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Regarding the GAR analysis, much of the heavy lifting
Oh.
has already been done by the FCA and DAC.
Agreed. Yeah.
The parties agree that the facts in this case are sufficiently similar to DAC, such that the analysis undertaken by the FCA is applicable.
Okay.
It was therefore admitted at trial that, wanted to lie, there was a tax benefit. Specifically, if Somerset was able to cease to be a CCPC after the continuation, its taxable income would not be subject to tax under 120.3 of the Act, plus it could take advantage of the general rate reduction at section 122.4. There was avoidance transactions. Somerset has agreed to the continuation on December 10, 2018, as well as the incorporation of Windfall Ventures, J. Steckle Holdings Limited, and RJ Steckle Investment Limited on December 15, 2018. The director's resolution on December 24, 2018. The February 25, 2019 payment of dividends were all avoidance transactions giving rise to the tax benefits.
Okay. So fine.
Perfect. Let's continue. The only remaining issue for the application of the GAR is whether the avoidance transactions were abusive. Review of DAC investments. In considering this, I am bound by the findings in DAC, which were nicely summarized at paragraph 77 of that decision. In summary, the tax court erred in finding that the GAR did not apply. I find that the GAR does apply. In continuance of DAC to the BVI was used as a mean to circumvent the relevant anti-deferral measures. The transaction fell outside and frustrated the rationale of subsection 255.1. The anti-deferral measures in section 123.3 and 123.4 of the ITL were also abused because the transactions defeated the anti-deferral rationale of these provisions. The appellant admits that the continuance of Somerset to the BVI was used as a mean to circumvent the relevant anti-deferral measures. Yet the appellant argues that the transaction does not fall outside and frustrates the rationale of subsection 255.1. This because the anti-deferral measures in sections 120.3 and 120.4 of the ITA were not abused. They claim that Somerset had the opportunity to undertake and not turn the transaction. The appellant therefore argues that what was an abusive transaction in DAC is not in this present case. This because the appellant, through a different transaction, could have achieved the same commercial result as an equal or better tax result. Avoidance
Okay.
transactions will be abusive whether the outcome or result of those transactions A is an outcome that the provisions relied on seek to prevent, B defeats the underlying rationale of the provision relied on, or C circumvents certain provisions in a manner that frustrates the object, spirit, and purpose of those provisions.
Dean's Night.
Dean's Night.
Yeah.
Object, spirit, and purpose, the OSP of sections of the Act, do not change depending of the fact of the particular case.
Exciting.
you.
Total energy
total
services.
energy.
Okay.
In DAC, the FCA described the OSP for 123.3 of the Act as follows. The object, spirit, and purpose of section 123.3 is to reduce income tax therefore opportunities that individuals earning investment income directly might otherwise obtain by earning such income through a CCPC.
Yeah. The incorporated pocketbook idea.
For Section 122.4, DAC determined that the OSP for excluding investment income of a CCPC from the Section 123.4 tax rate reduction is twofold. One, the investment income already has a preferential tax rate, and two, the exclusion preserved the fundamental principle that investment income should be taxed the same whether it is received directly or through a private corporation. Citing the written submissions, citing
Okay.
DAC. The FCA held that the OSP of Section 255.1 is to make tax provisions
boy.
fair for corporations moving or leaving Canada by way of continuance.
Okay.
Finally, as already noted at paragraph 53 above, in DAC, the FCA concluded that the continuance transaction was used as a means to circumvent the anti-deferral measures. The continuance transaction fell outside and frustrated the rationale of subsection 255.1. The anti-deferral measures in sections 120.3 and 120.4 were also abused because the transaction defeated the anti-deferral rationale of these provisions. DAC. Alternative transactions. The appellant argue that what was abusive in DAC is not abusive in this instance. This is because of the availability of an alternative set of transactions. Alternative transactions that taxpayer might have carried out may be considered in the course of the GAR analysis, according to 3295.940 Canada. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's
Sure.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be relevant. If the taxpayer can illustrate that there are other transactions that could have achieved the same result without incurring any tax, this is relevant consideration in determining whether or not the avoidance
I'm really
transaction
nervous
is
about
abusive.
this door that the taxpayer is trying to open here. What's the site here? 17? Footnote 17?
This is the same,
That's
3295.
329, yeah.
Which is fine. I agree with this. Like, if you defeated the rationale of
I
a
n- I
provision,
don't-
but you could have achieved the same result without defeating anything.
It's trying to open the door that if I can find any other transaction that I could have done, or I could have got reduced tax, then now you have to start thinking about this alternative that I could have done that I didn't do, and use this as a comparator
Yeah, but
to help me, to get me out of a GAR. I don't.
it's a bit retroactive tax planning.
Yeah,
I think.
it is. Yeah.
But also, you must make sure this alternative transaction is also not an abuse.
Well, exactly. So
It's like there's plenty I could have done that is also not permitted. The FCA has stated that alternative transactions are helpful in determining the object, spirit, and purpose of the relevant provisions when considering the GAR.
sure.
Put more simply, the object, spirit, purpose of the legislation is not ever changing from one taxpayer to the next. Yet the existence of an alternative transaction may mean that the transaction is not abusive when the court considers the overall result of the series. In any case, yeah.
It's a lot of obiter that I just don't. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Well, let's see how open the door is. In any case, even applying the alternative transaction analysis as proposed, I do not find this helpful for the appellant. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
It's yeah. They don't find it helpful because okay, there's a little bit of confusion here because the next paragraph is going to talk about when I should be thinking about alternative transactions, but we already established that the FCA has stated that alternative transactions are helpful. So I don't know why we're doing
But
that.
when are they useful? Alternative transactions should be considered by the court in the GAR analysis if they meet a 5-part test. The onus is upon the appellant to show that the 5 conditions were met. This is also from 329. A, they are available under the Act. B, they are not so remote as to be practically infeasible. C, they have a high degree of commercial and economic similarity to the series and issue. D, they generate tax consequences approximately as favorable as the series at issue. And E, they are not abusive of the GAR. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Proposed
Oh my goodness.
alternative transactions.
Same heading. Same heading again.
The alternative transaction suggested by the appellant is that Somerset could have been incorporated into BVI in 1943. But this
Okay.
is what happened because of Uchronia.
255.1 is
It was
getting exactly
incorporated
the
in 1943.
yeah.
What is the alternative? I don't understand the alternative.
Yeah.
It's the same.
Okay? So what is the appellant saying?
Or in a country other than Canada.
Okay.
Accordingly, Somerset could have been a BVI corporation all along. It still would have owned the buildings in Vancouver, still would have been taxable on the capital gains from the Starlight sale, still would have paid the general tax rate on its taxable capital gain, but would not have been subject to the Section 123.3 tax on that income. In this scenario, I do not accept that this is a reasonable alternative transaction. In applying the guidance given by the FCA, this transaction is clearly too remote to be feasible.
Okay.
Yeah, I need time travel. But I can do it because the law applies. The proposal by the appellants that Somerset could have incorporated in a different country 83 years before the matter came to trial. Stating the obvious, this is not something that the appellant could have made occur in any recent time frame.
I just do not understand this analysis. Okay.
I like how the appellant is basically, you know what? 83 years ago, we should have known that the CCPC were going to exist in 2025, and we should have known that the tax regime would change in 1971. We should have known all of this because Ukraine.
But they were resident in Canada
Yeah.
all the way
But
along.
they could have incorporated in the VVI since its inception.
B is... 89.1 tells me that a Canadian corporation is resident since 1971 until now, which they were.
They could have been non-resident. I don't know what... I don't
That's
know.
not I don't understand this. Okay.
But the reason why is because it is what happened. It is a non-resident, a resident non-incorporated since 1943.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Do they mean that
I just don't understand.
they want to be a non-resident? Okay. To that end, I agree with the submission of the respondent. Moreover, alternative transactions do not provide a time machine allowing a taxpayer to go back in time to create an entirely new set of factual circumstances. The alternative transaction must be one that is contemporaneous with the transaction it's undertaken. Oh,
Okay.
there is a footnote. As noted at trial, the BVI did not exist in 1943.
Okay.
In any case, the appellant made clear that its alternative transaction was an incorporation in another country in 1943. You don't even know where. The BVI did not
Just
exist
not
in
Canada.
1943.
I mean, it's irrelevant, right? Like, the
This
point
is so
is,
remote. Come on.
if you're making an alternative argument, your argument is you're incorporated somewhere other than Canada. Just forget all
Yeah.
this BVI business, other than Canada. Even so, how does that help you? If
You
were
must be a non-resident.
Yeah.
But what is the
Right?
the alternative argument is that I could have been a non-resident all along.
But that's not the argument they're making. They're
No.
making an argument about they could have been incorporated somewhere other than Canada, but that would not have changed the CCPC definition that makes you a Canadian corporation if you're resident in Canada and have been resident from 1971 until now, which you were.
They also want to incorporate in 1972?
Yeah.
Is this the argument?
I don't know.
I don't understand.
don't know.
this. It runs also afoul of paragraph D of the 5-part FCA test. The suggested alternative transaction must generate tax consequences approximately as favorable as the series at issue. Yet, if the appellant were incorporated outside of Canada in 1943 and remained a Canadian resident,
Yeah.
as such in the scenario, then
There you
Somerset would
go.
still be a Canadian resident since
Hello.
1971.
So I don't
Con-
get it. I don't
Continuing
get
to
it.
the relevant time, in such a scenario, the appellant would still meet the definition of a Canadian corporation. It would be taxed on the CCPC.
Exactly. Hello?
Yeah, but you have
You
to
gotta pick up the
also
phone and
be.
see if anybody's home. Is anyone home
Hey.
at the
Hey, what is this argument? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello?
There's no one.
There's no one home.
Okay, so the argument is I incorporated outside. It's either incorporated in BVI in 1972 or I incorporated in BVI and I was a resident of the
Yeah.
BVI since 1972. But in that case, it's taxable Canadian property. How does that help you?
Oh my goodness.
It's DCP anyways.
Come
You're
on.
taxable in Canada anyways.
Yeah. Well,
But also, if you were
I just
a
don't get it.
non-resident of Canada, you would be taxed as a non-resident. So that doesn't make sense. That doesn't
yes,
help
it
you.
just doesn't. I just don't understand this
Is
argument.
the argument I should have been incorporated in 1972?
I just don't know. I don't
Which
understand
doesn't make
it.
sense. The
I don't get
corporation
it.
exists at 43.
I mean, paragraph 73 sums it up. Like, I don't understand your alternative
Yeah.
argument when that wouldn't have changed you'd still be resident. Yeah. So paragraph 74 is the conclusion that it doesn't help you. But
It is my conclusion that the
Yeah.
proponent of the transaction, as suggested by the appellant, does not
Does not-
assist in its argument.
does not assist the argument. Period. End of story.
I don't understand.
I don't get it. I don't get this argument.
Who was there? Who was like, oh, I understand what happened. I understand.
I must be
what
missing
happened.
something. I feel like when it's so obvious that
I understand. Someone read DAC, like I did, and was like, but if DAC had incorporated in the VVI since its inception, it would
Yeah.
not be a Canadian corporation, it would not be a CCPC.
but
Which is true, because they were incorporated after 1971.
yeah.
So they made an argument that works with DAC and brought it to a factual context that doesn't work.
That predates the
And
yeah.
they-
That would be grandfathered.
They never realized what
Yeah,
what
I don't get
happened.
it. I don't get it. All right.
This is weird.
Yeah. It is
Okay,
very strange.
Let's continue. Last page.
Hey, here we go.
We made it. Everyone. I am bound by the reasoning and application of the GAR by the FCA and DAC. If Somerset was found to not be a corporation as a result of continuance, the GAR would still apply.
Yep.
As agreed by the parties, in the application of the GAR, the reasonable tax consequences would be the denial of tax benefits resulting from the avoidance transaction. The denied tax benefits are derived from Section 133.3 not being applicable and for Section 133.4 being applicable to Somerset following its continuation into the BVI. Conclusion. The appeal is denied.
Yep.
The appellant remained a CCPC after the continuation, such that Section 133.3 tax applies to all of the 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2020 taxable capital gains. Furthermore, the minister properly disallowed the general tax rate reduction under subparagraph 1.3.41b3 alike in respect of the taxation years for the same reason, and costs are payable by the appellant to the respondent. Signed this 29th day of June 2026, Justice McPhee.
Okay. Cool. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I have no complaints with the judgment. I have no complaints with this judgment. I just the disjunctive conjunctive threw me off. I just couldn't follow it. I didn't understand the argument, but I fully agreed with the reasoning.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So like all you have to do is just read that thing, and it says, if you were resident in Canada before 1971 and up until now, then you are resident of Canada now at the relevant time.
And because of the deeming provision, you
Then-
were never incorporated in Canada.
Doesn't matter. Does not matter.
And so, but I really don't understand this alternative argument that
Yeah.
the Crown's argument is because you were never incorporated in Canada, you were always incorporated in the BVI, so
Yeah.
B applies.
Yeah.
So my alternative argument is, well, if I had done that without the time machine,
Yes.
then B would still apply.
Right.
Like, it's either you actually did it factually, you incorporated in the BVI in 1943, and this is the result, or you have a deeming provision, Uchronia, where you incorporated in 1943 in the BVI.
Yeah.
Which
Either
is
way.
not only Uchronia, but
Yeah.
the BVI did not
Yeah.
exist in 1943, so that's rewriting history. So I think we should edit the Wikipedia page of BVI to explicitly state that it existed in 1943,
Listen,
because obviously it did.
rewriting history is a fascinating aspect of some of these deeming provisions, but I will say that the confusion for both of us is that even if you rewrote the history the way that the taxpayer wanted, you didn't get a different result. So that's why we're puzzled. So if we could, I guess, sum it up, something just seems wrong about this alternative argument. I just didn't follow it down to any other conclusion than the one that we already drew. I just don't follow it. I just didn't follow it. Yeah.
The alternative argument is weird. I totally agree with this judgment.
Yeah.
Well, except for a small little details, it's pretty good
I
writing.
mean, it's just showing us that, okay, well, there's a possible statutory interpretation, like an interesting statutory interpretation question when you ask, does this part B of the definition require actual incorporation,
Yes.
or can a deemed incorporation apply? And the judge resolves that. Says deemed is actual, but they're the same thing.
Of course they are, because
That's appealable, though. I would say that's a question of law, and if the taxpayer wants to appeal this on the law, that's what they would appeal, right? To the
I would
FCA.
appeal that.
Yeah.
Resident throughout the period means a corporation is resident in Canada at that time and was incorporated in Canada. Or B, resident in Canada throughout the period.
I just don't see how it helps them. Like you could say that resident in Canada throughout the period that begin. I just don't see how it helps.
That's the thing about like the disruptive or, it's that can I be both? Because if my idea is that B cannot apply because I was actually incorporated in Canada, then A doesn't apply because I was never incorporated in Canada, and B doesn't apply because I was actually incorporated in Canada. So it's kind of a loop.
There's a strange loop
It's
here.
a time travel loop.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna keep our eye on this one. So if there's an appeal, we will try to get the documents. We will get the documents to read the factum to figure out what this legal appeal could possibly be, which is an appeal of this interpretation of subsection 89.1.
Well, it's kind of hard to appeal because you also have to appeal the GAR part. Because
like in Husky, you see the government doing a protective appeal to protect the GAR analysis.
Well, the difference is DAC, because we have a binding precedent from the FCA.
Yeah.
That is maybe going to the Supreme Court.
That's true.
So if the Supreme Court says GAR applies in the end, then even if you win on the statutory interpretation, you're going to lose on the GAR.
Yeah.
So you kind of want to do protective appeal just in case
maybe
DAC wins.
Maybe. So we'll see. I don't know. I don't know how long do taxpayers have to say they're gonna.
I mean,
appeal?
usually it's 30 days, but there is this summer break at the end of July that extends the delay.
Okay. So we may hear by the end of July, or we might not, and we might have to wait until.
But I think the lesson from this case is when you apply a tax planning, that they thought that the planning in DAC worked, right, at that time.
Yeah.
Even if DAC had won at the FCA level, Somerset would still have lost. Because when you do this analysis in a tax planning, you have some weird circumstances.
Yeah.
Like in this case, where the company was created so long ago, that pre-1971 rules apply.
Yeah.
And it is possible in other planning where it's the same, where you have those old grandfather rules from pre-1971 apply. And just be careful. And I want to say gare à vous, but this is not even the GAR. This is really just thinking about, is the planning working for my client or not, even without the GAR?
Yeah.
And I think this is an important lesson here for practitioners. Like,
it's
always be careful to apply the planning to the situation in front of you.
Yeah.
Make sure it works. Even if it's a pre-packaged plan, it might not work.
On your facts, it might not. Yeah.
It's a good example. And I think if I were like a litigation for a taxpayer looking at this, I would be like, like the chances are pretty low. But let's try it. I mean, maybe this disruptive or this alternative argument, maybe something could have worked.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, the alternative argument really was like, I was incorporated in the BVI and I was a resident of the BVI since 1943. It's a bit far-fetched, like, I think. It's a bit remote.
Yep.
Remotely. It's an interesting case to have this.
Yeah.
You have a GAR precedent from the FC, and this is not a GAR case.
Yeah. All this to avoid a refundable tax.
All this to avoid tax that you're not going to pay at the end. It's a refundable tax.
Yeah, but it's to get deferral. And it just shows you how valuable deferral is, once again.
Well, thank you, everyone. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. This was the Tax Files.
See you next time.
For some reason, all the cameras are dead, except yours.
No, I'm still on.
No, but the other ones are dead. Look.
Hilarious. All right.
There are some mysteries. Oh, device is sleeping. Oh, they're back. But they're not.
But we're still live, so it would be great if you ended the stream.
I'm
On
doing
YouTube,
this
at
now.
least.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Have a good week.